And we're live.
Are we live? Hang on.
How about that? Live again.
We're back. We're back in business. Nice. How you doing, guys?
We're in business.
We're good. We're good. Happy Thursday, guys.
Yes, Thursday. We're getting close to the weekend. So we got an action.
We got a big lineup today.
Packed.
We do.
Big lineup.
Joe.
Big one.
We got a lot of stuff. But before we get to that, should we just roll the intro?
Let's
Roll
roll.
our thing.
Absolutely.
Let's do our thing. Welcome to the murder table.
Cheers.
Salute.
Oh, cheers.
Oh, cheers.
Salud.
Sir.
Cheers.
Cheers. Slunch. A caipirinha.
Like Martinelli, as you said, with a kick.
We do a little swirl.
Or zat. Appetizer? Appetizer. That makes me sad, but you know what makes me happy? Whiskey.
Cacao.
It's everything I thought it would be and less smelly.
Less smelly.
Hey.
I think we're more smelly, frankly.
Every time it gets me.
It does get me too.
Right
We like
here?
smelly.
Right here? Like a little reflux? You need a little bit of like... You need a little bit of... All right. So anyway, what we got tonight? We got a big one. We have our fine friends.
Big one.
The big one. Our fine friends from ImpEx Beverages, Joshua Hatton and Sam Filmus.
Yep,
They have orchestrated a star-studded extravaganza for us.
they have.
Tell us more, Aaron. Tell us more.
Well, we are covering many countries, I think, tonight, or many time zones for sure. But we'll get to that, and we're also doing something for the community as well. We are trying to help out the hospitality industry through a charitable organization called Another Round, Another Rally, which tries to help out those hospitality workers in need. And we're going to be talking to the CEO of that organization later on too.
Shall I roll the ticker so people know
I think
what
you
we're
should
talking about?
roll the ticker.
Roll the ticker. All right, there we go. We got a little ticker.
So
Ticker
please
thing.
go to Another Round, Another Rally and .org, and you can check them out. Look at what you can do and all the programs that they have, which we'll hear about later. And you can donate to that organization to help out all the folks that are in desperate need as we are knee deep in this crazy pandemic.
Yep. So we
6
got.
months in.
Let's see. So what have we got covered? We've got L.A., San Francisco. We have our dear friend in Connecticut. 2 guys in Cherry Hill. We have someone in. Is one of them going to be on Isla?
2 in Scotland.
1 in Speyside, 1 in Isla, and 1 in Wales.
And
And then
one.
we've got Tel Aviv.
We are all over the place.
We are everywhere. We are everywhere. So
We-
all that being said,
We would make Marconi just throw up. Literally.
Should we bring our guests in?
His head would spin. Bring your
Let's
guests
roll
in.
the-
Well,
Let's roll our intro.
Bring in the
first.
first guests. Sure.
Let's roll the intro.
Roll
yeah.
the intro.
All right, let's roll the intro and then we'll bring them in.
And then we'll chat a bit.
All right, cool. Then we'll bring these guys in. And then there were 5.
There we are.
And then there were 5.
We have-
Gentlemen,
Welcome,
Let me,
Sam, Joshua.
Let me
Tonight.
properly introduce these folks.
Oh, okay.
We have Sam Filmus, and the president of ImpEx Beverages, and Joshua Hatton, the national sales director of ImpEx Beverages. Hi, guys.
Hello. How are you?
we're good.
How
You were
are
going to say something?
I would wear an ImpEx shirt like Sam does, except unlike Sam,
It's in
I've
the wash.
gained. Well, I've gained the COVID-19 pounds, and my ImpEx shirt doesn't fit me anymore. So I'm just wearing another shirt.
I'm using yours, right, Joshua?
What's that?
I'm using your shirt.
I'm using my, yes, exactly.
Well, like I said, and in this time, if you don't die from corona, you're going to die from like heart disease from all the eating and drinking.
That's right, right.
So
guys, we've known each other quite a while, right?
Mhm.
Joshua, we've known each other quite a while. Sam, we've known quite a while. How did ImpEx start? Joshua, how did you come to ImpEx? Sam, how did you start ImpEx?
I think it's probably best to let Sam tell the ImpEx origin story. I come in later chapters, but Sam can give you all of how the story starts.
Well, Aaron, I just looked up. I thought we saw each other like last year. It was 4 years since we saw each other last time.
Wow.
At the Current Games in Costa Mesa. But it feels like we just saw each other yesterday. ImpEx, the importer of boutique and kind of a niche distilled spirits from around the world, as this today's event kind of shows. I want to first of all to thank you for including us, for invite, and we're proud and honored to be part of your show. Well, like I said, you guys one of the favorite people in the industry, very enthusiastic. It's always great to watch your episodes. They're full of fun, full of jokes. And now I'm in a different position, but hopefully we're going to make it even more.
Sam needs to get out more.
There we go. So, yeah, basically, ImpEx was founded in 2008. But before, I used to run and still run the distribution company in California, and I think it's 24th year since we started. In 2008, a gentleman by the name of Ed Cole approached me. He was representing Signatory in Edgewater at that point, with intention or idea of opening the company that would be importing some brands. And that's how it started. And it went upon probably up until like 2017 when we decided to go, our ways to continue with ImpEx, and Ed turned himself into another venture. But by that time, we're more recognized on the map, even though the brands that we brought were not well known or not known at all. But I was very lucky to have friends like Joshua, even before he joined the company, and he was and still is a huge whiskey enthusiast and blogger, and runs his own show and podcast and many other things. Joshua was involved in we had another beer, or I don't remember exactly what we had at that time, but maybe I was drunk enough to just say, look, why don't you just quit what you do and combine pleasure and business? Why are you just selling some metal cabinets for So that's how it started. It was a great journey from that moment. He said, I need to talk to my general. We all have generals in the kitchen, our bosses, and the general apparently said yes. And we're very excited. And since then, we just continue brainstorming as to how to bring best brands to our portfolio, and how to position them and how to make the success. And sometimes we argue, but it always ends up with me not taking my AK-47 and him not taking it. So far we're okay. Knock on wood.
What's your version, Josh?
My version is not too different. The reason why Sam felt drunk is I went back to 1974 and found some Spanish Fly, and then came back and popped that into his drink to make him feel. In 2015, I got the bug. I had been passionate about whiskey at that point for probably a good 9 to 10 years, and so much so where that's almost all I thought about. And when the opportunity came where there was an opening at ImpEx, I absolutely jumped at the position, because because what ImpEx was importing were all of my favorite brands. You know, we had KIlchoman, who I had been following since 2007, and we had Isle of Arran at the time, and you know, I had just been loving all that they were doing, and so many other brands that I just loved had been coming from ImpEx, and it just seemed to be the perfect marriage. So the job came available. I begged and pleaded. Sam said yes. I took the job, and I started handling basically the northeast of the U.S. and also Illinois, and that went on again from 2015 and through until about 2019 or so. And then earlier this year, I accepted the position of National Sales Director. And so while I still handle parts of the Northeast, I'm also working with all of our ImpEx sales reps to help them manage their various territories around the country. And
one of the interesting things about you guys is the list of brands. There are so many. It's such a varied list, and you guys are getting into other things I know too. How do you guys go about finding brands and picking brands? What's your kind of criteria for finding new spirits to bring in?
Well, Aaron, I think we're in a position now when, you know, brands approach us, and you know that's true. We're not hunting for the brands. It's just, you know, building the name and basically the philosophy of how we see, you know, developing the new brands that no one heard about, and finding the right brand for the company. Like we started with the Scotch, but then at some point I saw Cavalans and Ambroots and other, you know, whiskies outside Scotland coming into the market and expecting a huge interest. So I said to myself, you know, bourbon is coming from this side, some world whiskey coming from other sides. Let's just, you know, be open to some, you know, offers from weird countries and countries that I would never think that would produce whiskeys. And probably the latest example would be the greatest one would be Milk and Honey from Tel Aviv. And that was, you know, somebody, I think it was Gal Granov who approached you, Joshua, and that's how it started.
Yeah, well, close. Yeah, I was very interested in Milk and Honey, and I reached out to Gal, and because Gal knew the Milk and Honey guys, and he connected us to Milk and Honey, and that's how. Isn't that interesting? Through a blogger, right? Through a peer, that we were able to get another brand. That's a
It's
fun
the whiskey
connection.
fabric, Joshua. It's the whiskey fabric.
It's the whiskey fabric.
You know, I find this whole thing so incestuous in a good way. I mean, you know, Josh, I remember being at a party at Marshall Neyman's house in Los Angeles, and Chris Udy was there. I think it was a Hanukkah party. And Chris had told me, I think you just started working with Sam in the North.
I remember this. Yep.
And I remember talking to Chris, and I don't think he knew you at all, because he said, I don't think I've ever met this person that we just hired. And that's weird. It's like, it would just seem like everyone's connected to someone. I remember Sam talking to you at the Orange County Scottish Festival about Raj from our buddy Raj from Purple Valley.
Glass Revolution.
Yeah. And how everyone just seems to know each other in this strange, weird web. And it's never ending. We're always finding someone that knows somebody else in this little circle.
It's great that you brought it up, Aaron. You know, same thing with the recommendations. Like, KIlchoman is it has always a special place in our heart. But basically, every and each supplier that we have, they would come to them for the reference. What do you think? Who is your importer in the U.S.? Well, you know, ImpEx. What do you think about that? And they're very helpful in terms of being honest. I hope, saying some good things about us. Yeah, you know, there's a few more things that kind of connect us together, like, you know, Dr. Jim Swan being involved in 4 of the distilleries that we represent today. You're right. There's a story, and it's a small world, but the spirits world is even smaller. And sometimes the word of mouth is more than $1 million advertisement. Or
I'm not going to give away a secret, but we were contacted. Angela was contacted, I think today, by another distillery who has a Jim Swan connection, because he saw that this was posted, I believe, via ImpEx.
Sam, you posted it, I think, on Facebook.
Saw that, and we're going to have another Jim Swan connected distillery on next month, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, it's an interesting, weird spider web of connections with all these folks.
Mm-hmm. It's a very small, tight-knit community of people. There's no doubt about it.
We like to drink. We like to hang out.
So how has COVID affected you, your business? Hard not to talk about that these days.
Well, Jack can't keep himself in his dress shirt. That's the effect of the business.
Yeah, that's how it affected.
Haircut changed.
Yeah, me too.
It did affect it, but I can probably say we were able to keep all the reps on both companies, the ImpEx and JV company. That makes me very proud to say, because seeing big guys laying off hundreds and hundreds of reps, and that's why I'm so honored to be today in this event, because this help to hospitality industry is tremendous and it's very much needed. So it's great. Hopefully Amanda, she's coming in later, will take us more through the needs. If you want to know the numbers, they look ugly, but at the same time, we see a big jump in retail stores, and we see a big decline when it comes to the on-prem scene. Bars and restaurants. But again, we represent such a niche, small brands that even if I found people change their mentality. They changed like with the COVID and seeing how many people unfortunately pass away. Some people don't mind spending $100,000, $150,000, $200 for a bottle, because they say, what the heck, I don't know how long I'm going to live. So not trying to say that we take advantage of it, but that's the fact. Mm-hmm. So this balance keeps us, I wouldn't say growing, but floating.
Still around.
I also think that maybe some people aren't spending the money in the bars, so they have the money to spend for the bottle to bring home.
Yep.
Right.
So, while it's unfortunate for the bars, for someone like you, if you're able to pick up the bottle shop business, it almost not balances out, but it helps.
Exactly, Mike. Exactly. On the JVS side, we have a pretty strong portfolio that designed just for bars and restaurants, cocktail components, and that actually died basically. But then I see some shops, like today I got a phone call from the whiskey shop who specializes in whiskeys. They want to see if we have any cocktail components so they can sell it as a kit. And then one of my sales managers here in California came up with this idea of having tonic water and some Fernet and some whiskey too. So the industry is switching. It's switching, and you could see some tremendous changes. What we do now, probably we would have enjoyed ourselves sitting in one room. Can't do it, but we found another way. So.
Right.
Do you guys think that some of these quote unquote temporary changes, alcohol distribution changes across the country might be permanent? People buying direct and cocktails to go, and
lately or nowadays, like never before, people are talking about eliminating the 3-tier system. And we see a lot of online companies that would act like a distributor, middle tier, that would sell to the retail shops or restaurants, etc. So it's definitely changed. It changes the way that, as we're talking about, we're going to get back to this, I'm pretty sure many, many times about this on another round, another Riley, where they would come up with some kind of a robot bartender that would do this kind of changes, which I'm not really looking forward to, honestly. I think when we deal with this, we want this human touch, but probably this is something that we cannot control or avoid.
Well, I'm really happy that you kept all your employees, because the last thing I wanted was Elijah Amon sleeping on my couch.
With 46 stitches in his armor.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Elijah is a rep here in Southern California for JVS. Well,
Everyone knows Elijah very well. He's a greatest supporter of Single Cask Nation ever, and I'm enjoying this kind of friendship because Joshua is very enthusiastic, and Elijah, and you could see these two, collaborating and talking hours about this Single Cask Nation expression versus that one. It's just beautiful.
He's a de facto member of the Southern California Whiskey Club, which Chris Udy started with Michael Reese, I think 2013, 2012. So all our Zoom tastings this last 6 months have been, in a lot of ways, connected to Elijah. So we're very happy with his help down here. We talked about the hospitality industry a little bit, so we should mention again that we're here for helping the hospitality industry out and all those workers that need help. And anotherrally.org is where you guys can go. You can see that on the screen. You can go to the website, check out what they do. They're a 501c, so your donations are tax deductible. It is an organization that is actually older than COVID, thankfully, because there's always upheaval in the industry and folks that need help. And our guest later is going to tell us how they're helping out with that. With that, I think we probably should look at our first out of town guest, or out of the country guest.
Yes, Milk and Honey is in the house. They're in the green room. Is it Aitan? Is that how you say his name?
Hatton.
Oh, Hatton.
Yep. Come and say, nope, you're both wrong. It's pronounced. So let's let him do it so we don't slaughter his name.
Shall we bring him in?
So yeah, Milk and Honey coming from Tel Aviv, Israel.
All right, let me bring him in, and I'll do a little web sharing here of the what's that? 1 second here. Sorry, I'm navigating two screens, doing this multimedia stuff. Oops, and take that out, and we're bringing in. How do you say it? Welcome, sir. Hello.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Hatton. How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. And you?
What time is it there?
2:30.
Oh my gosh.
2:30 in the morning.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, at early morning. It's much better for you.
There's a saying in the States that nothing good happens after what, 2 a.m.? But it's not 2 a.m. here, so this is all good.
That's right. Shalom. Thank you for coming. Thank you. I think we have a little bit of a delay.
There's a little bit of a lag.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Can you hear me? Because I have some bad.
We can hear you.
We can, yes.
So tell us about Milk and Honey.
Okay, I'm gonna check my net.
Wi-Fi.
Some problem. You hear guys 1 second.
No, I'll take you out. Why don't you log out and log back in? Dun, dun, dun. Technology. You'd think there was a 10-hour spread from west to east.
If the wire is not long enough, I think that's a problem.
I think so. I think that's the problem.
The problem with the World Wide Web thing.
Uh-huh.
So it has to do with the G5.
Have you considered two halves of one coconut in a string?
We could do that. We could do that.
That's way beyond our budget.
What do we do about the video, though?
Oh, right.
We aspire to the coconuts. We're not there yet.
Do you have a swallow? Do you think the swallow can carry the coconut?
One day,
Well,
Campbell
What
soup.
kind of swallow are we talking about?
African or European? Well played, Joshua.
Bravo. All right. We lost Aton. He'll be back. We could do more Monty Python jokes if you like. That works
I'm
for
here.
me.
Yeah.
You know what? You want to? Well, we'll let Aton talk. Aton. What did we say?
Aton.
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 Aton. Okay. We'll let him talk about the whiskey because I'm not even going to say the name. We're going to hold it till he comes back in. But it sounds fascinating. I'm intrigued.
So I won't mention the name either, but let me tell you a quick story. So this was April 2019, and the entire ImpEx team went out to Scotland. We went to Wales. You know, we wanted to visit all of our suppliers at the time, and we met the folks from Milk and Honey flew from Tel Aviv to meet us in Edinburgh. Right, this is about the time that we're talking about partnering up and importing their products, and so they brought us some of their, not their core products, because at the time they didn't have core products, but they brought us some of their releases to taste, and we tasted through them, and they were all delicious. And then they started putting some cask samples in front of us, and there was one cask sample in particular that was so well regarded in our group that our Arizona guy, Brian Dvorak, absconded with the sample. It was gone. And one day, I think we found it under his pillow. He just didn't want to part with it because it was so insanely delicious in a cask type that I'd never heard of before. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, that's a teaser.
Yeah.
That's what we call a
teaser.
teaser in the biz. All right. Aiden is back. We're going to just wait for a second. He was in. Where'd he go? Oh, no. He's gone.
Connection issue.
This gets a little frustrating. But oh, what can you do?
Joshua, Joshua, maybe go a little deeper with Gal Granov and the connection with you guys.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, Gal is a name that I'm sure you guys know very well. He's
Whiskey Israel, is that him?
Whiskey Israel, right?
Bingo.
And so, you know, back in the mid to late aughts, as it were, is when he started his blog, and it was right around the same time that I started my blog, and my business partner Jason started his blog. Yeah, my blog was JewishSingleMaltWhiskeySociety.com, which rolled right off the tongue.
You were what, 2008, 2009? When did you start?
Started in 2000. I want to say 2008, which means it was 2009, because it's always the opposite of what I want to say. And so anyway, so I've known Gal a long time, and I've always, you know, since I heard about Milk and Honey, and this was probably in 2015-ish, somewhere around there, you started hearing about this distillery being built. I kept an eye on them. And then I started hearing people tasting some of their stuff, their 2-year-old stuff, their new make, and just being absolutely floored by what's going on at the distillery. You know, it's like you had said before, it's a Jim Swan distillery. And he had he had many expertise, but one of his expertise was helping a young distillery get off the ground and bottle whiskey at a young age that tasted and was mature, right? It was balanced, it was mature. Yes, it was young, but it wasn't immature. It was a solid whiskey. And so when I heard that, even their new make alone was just, you could mainline it. I said, okay, we've got to get in touch with these people somehow. And so I reached out to Gal, and he put me in touch with them because he's part of the Holy Dram Whiskey Club, I think it's called, which is run by Tomer Gorin, who's M&H's master distiller or head distiller.
Okay.
And so that's how we got in touch with Milk and Honey. And then Tal, who was supposed to be here this evening, we've got Hatton instead, the CEO of the distillery. We met in New York, and we had a really nice breakfast together and some espresso, and we just hit it off. I mean, everybody at Milk and Honey is just as lovely as can be, and it was an instant connection. And they knew they wanted to work with us, and we knew we wanted to work with them. It was just that simple and straightforward from the get-go.
Your podcast with Jason, when you guys were there, I can't remember if you were there with the podcast or it was recorded, where it was recorded, but that was fascinating. And I think their experimental stuff that you guys talked about was just wacky, like the stuff at the Dead Sea, for instance.
That was absolutely wild. So this was my first time in Israel. Jason wasn't with me. I was alone. This was my first time in Israel, and as a 45-year-old Jew, that makes me a pretty bad Jew, not having gone to Israel sooner than that.
Join the crowd.
No, huh? So anyway, and so they told me about this Dead Sea whiskey. So, oh my gosh, you've got to show me this. And maybe Eitan will talk about the Dead Sea whiskey a little bit. I think it's probably better coming from his mouth than mine, because he knows all about it and how greedy the angels are down in the Dead Sea.
Understandable.
I'm sure he could. Yeah.
Welcome back.
Hi guys, sorry for the bad connection. I have really terrible network issues. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, much better.
Thank you.
Much improved. Welcome.
All right, I think now I'm set to go. So very nice to meet you all, guys.
Great.
Joshua
Thanks for coming on.
the story of how you guys connected through Gal Granoff. Why don't you give us a little bit of a thumbnail on how the distillery came to be?
So we established in 2012 by a group of six friends. All of them are from the high-tech and startup business. None of them were born and raised with glass of whiskey in Scotland, but all of them had huge passion for whiskey. And we start to think about locations around Israel, start to build a distillery in 2013, thinking Tel Aviv would be the best spot for establishing a distillery, as it the heart of the culinary scene in Israel, and the startup industry, innovative part of Israel is absolutely located in Tel Aviv. So we thought it's going to be an urbanic, vibrant distillery as the city of Tel Aviv. Started production in 2015 and launched our whiskey just in this December of 2019. It's an amazing urbanic distillery that it's really inspiring from the land of milk and honey, but also from the city of Tel Aviv.
Were any of you guys in the founding group in the spirits industry? How do you go about, like, hey, I want to build a distillery? How does that happen?
Get a pile of money, get a big pile of cash.
No money, then what?
Take a trip to Scotland, get a still. Go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds really easy. Let's do it all together. Let's just establish a new distillery. But it has to do a lot with money. That's absolutely right. We have two owners that well-founded the distillery from day one, and we had some huge ambitions of doing everything not as small as you think, because a new distillery should be, but absolutely with one thing we said from start: we are going to be an export distillery, meaning all of our markets are going to be exported, not only the Israeli market. We thought about our brand as an international brand from day one. We learned a lot, actually. We learned in Scotland a lot. You were right. We saw a lot of distilleries before. And nowadays you can, establish a distillery, a micro one, really easy. The only thing you need is a lot of ambitious money, and other thing I cannot say now. But
we call it chutzpah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, chutzpah.
We all
I was
have
going to say
chutzpah, yeah.
chutzpah.
So was there a thriving whiskey community in Tel Aviv or in Greater Israel?
It's starting to be. I mean, in the past 5 years, the whiskey industry in Israel grew around 25% consumption. So you can see more and more brands and more people that are interested in whiskey. But we are a relatively small market yet. But there's a group of a lot of whiskey geeks that are really enthusiastic. but as volume industry, it is very small. Something that is unusual for our market is that 22% out of the consumption is single malt whiskey from Scotland. That's like double the size in the world. That is around 12% single malt, and the other is blended. In Israel, 22%. So I think it tells a lot about the market in Israel, meaning people a little bit more mature, the economy is great, so you can buy, I don't know, higher pricey single malts and not only blends. So it is a really different market. It's small, but it's growing a lot. You can see more and more whiskey in museums or bars or things like that is relatively only for whiskey.
I was just going to ask about the whiskey bar community. Are there dedicated whiskey bars, and is the cocktail world kind of growing well?
So everything in the Middle East is 5 years after the world. So yeah, now we have a huge cocktail scene and also some amazing whiskey bars. We have a whiskey museum that has more than 1,000 SKUs in the menu.
Whoa.
You can find a lot nowadays.
Yeah, I've been to that bar. That bar is fantastic.
What's the name of the bar?
What's it called?
Whiskey Museum, Whiskey Bar Museum. It's
in Tel Aviv.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'll look it up. I'll look it up while you guys are chatting.
So how does Jim Swan become part of this story?
So we hooked up with Jim early stage in the project in 2013. Of course, after his amazing, legendary name of producing and establishing a distillery in a hot climate environment, we thought Jim could be the best partner for us. Jim actually loved this project, not because of the scale of the distillery or my blue eyes, but he loved the project because Israel is a huge playground of maturing whiskey that's really different than other places around the world. It's a small country, but with 5 or 4, depends who you ask, different climate zones that are really different. So you can control different warehouses around Israel, but gain different effect, each and one of them, and not like in Scotland or places around the US. And Jim helped us from day one, setting up the recipe, the machinery, the raw materials, cherry picking, hand picking of cask was one of the best things he did for us. He was a huge, dearly friend of us, to be honest. We all really miss him. Jim helped us from 2013 to 17 when he passed away. We still follow his lead, and I think, I hope you all going to see that he made also a great job with us, with our head distiller, Tom McGowan.
Cheers to that. And speaking of that, we should probably look at this little
I think
baby.
so. So it is, what is it, M&H Pomegranate?
Oh, absolutely. So a little bit about our portfolio, and then I'm going to reach the pomegranate. We are launching this year 3 series of products. One is the classic. That's the entry level. Everyone can enjoy that. Very mellow and great for each. Yeah, absolutely, Joshua. This is for the everyday drum. And then we're going to have the Element series. That's going to have 3 different products: sherry finish, red wine, and peated. Above all of them, we're going to have a series of products we're going to call APAC. Our first release of APAC is going to be this pomegranate cask. So a little bit about that. Our DNA is has the DNA of a lot of Israelis are really into innovation. And we do a lot in this whiskey, production or maturation that is involving innovation. One of them is different kind of cask. In Israel, there's a winery that produces 1 million bottles. That's not so small in Israel. All of them are from pomegranate fruit. The pomegranate for our country or for our culture is a huge deal. We're just entering this our New Year's Eve of Rosh Hashanah. We all going to eat some pomegranate fruit as well. We are using their cask that they are producing wine out of pomegranate, and I think it's one of the amazing things we ever did. It's really different. It's unusual. You can feel a lot of tannins that are coming from the fruit of this amazing pomegranate fruit. The pomegranate casks are going to be the first release of this higher end product that we're going to have.
So it's 100% in the pomegranate cast, or it's starting a bourbon cask?
Absolutely 100%.
So it's an oak cask, but it had pomegranate wine in it?
Yep, absolutely. It was, for the produce of wine, for that winery, they are using oak cask, and we are using their cask as well. We have some amazing cask in our warehouse that is, as you already, I heard you speak about a little bit of our innovation part of different warehouses in the Dead Sea, or using some pomegranate cask. We also have some kosher cognac finish, white wine finish. All of them are going to be a part of this series of different changing cask strength small batches.
Do you know what the ABV, the proof is on this?
Oh, I think I don't know what which one do you have. All of them are going to be from 58 up to 62. Is going to be towards cask strength. We want more to, gain some popularity in the whiskey geek community, and I think through this series, we are going to get some attention.
Are these single cask, or you're going to do them in volume?
No, it's going to be small batches of around 2,000 bottles, 2,500, something like that. But it's all going to be really small batches, but not entirely single cask. Some of them in this series are going to be single cask, meaning if we are sourcing gray cask that it had huge impact and only release it as single cask, yes, we're going to do it.
I have a question on a personal note. A friend of mine who's Israeli, belongs to my synagogue. He went to Israel. He goes every year, and he brought me back a bottle of your new make, and it is delicious, as Joshua says. But I was surprised that it's only 50% ABV. Why is that?
No, the 50% is after diluted with water. Out of the steel comes in 73. That's the average. It's 70 up to 80. This new make up 50%. Before bottling, we are diluting it to 50% to be a little bit more approachable.
Well, Joshua and I would probably say, no water.
but a moment you're.
I would say water. Put some water in.
70%, maybe a little bit of water.
A little bit.
Let's get it down to 60.
It's delicious.
60.
It's delicious. So, speak about not just about your own company, but are there other distilleries in Israel, or are you guys? I know of one other one or two other ones, but that's it.
So M&H, our Milk and Honey, was the first, but I'm happy to say that nowadays you can find, let's say in the next 2 years, there are going to be 6 of us, meaning they're operating now another 3. And I know about another 2 that are going to establish in the next 2 years. All of us are doing really different things. So that's really interesting. Each one of the distilleries just decided to do a whole different kind of whiskey. One of them is only rye, one of them is only peated, one of them is, so it's very different. We have some really small one, and we have Milk and Honey in the higher level of volume, but it's starting to rise like a small industry or a category of Israeli whiskey.
I know that the craft beer industry is pretty big there, right? And it's a pretty big community, from what I'm told. Are you guys kind of close to in the whiskey world? The 4 or 5 of you guys?
Not as I wanted to be. I wanted to be a little bit more, that we can exchange some knowledge and help each other. But I think the other distilleries are in a really early stage. I think they need their own time by their own. But I think we are going to set like a community that can help each other, from sales to, I don't know, raw materials. But for us, the most important thing is just to exchange some knowledge and help, because we have really rough time establishing the distillery more in the part of registration, governmental things and things like that. We can help, but we know everybody, that's for sure. But we're not. I think we're all really busy, so we're not getting a lot of time together.
Talk about the barley that you guys are bringing. Are you is it all Israeli barley? Are you bringing it in from outside of the country?
Yeah, so Israel is a really hot country. We just had a heat wave, and here in my house we had 40 degrees Celsius. So no way that we can produce barley that is good for our industry in these conditions. So unfortunately, we have to import it from England. We are importing our malted barley from Muntons. That's the name of the company in England. Of course, following Dr. Jim Swan idea of which kind of barley, but all come from England.
And the peated
From Czech Republic, very different from Czech Republic, to be honest. Not a Scottish peated malt. So every half a year, we're stopping our production for 2 weeks, and we're doing only 2 weeks of peated peated malted barley. So we do it twice up to 3 times a year. So you can all taste it from the elements peated that you are going to get 2 months from now, something like that.
That sounds like a Baldini roadmap.
Peat Week.
Right?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Peat Week stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, Pete Week. Yeah.
So, how old is this particular whiskey?
The pomegranate.
Yeah, the pomegranate.
I
How
don't
long is
know.
it aged, I should say?
I don't know which sample you got. So
Oh.
I know that they're already ready. So it's going to be around 2.9 months up to 3, not more than that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They're all ready. I think you got the whiskey one. I think it's 3 years and several days, actually.
Mhm.
We already bottled the series that we are going to release in November, meaning you are going to get it in the States around December, January.
Okay.
So I think it's around 3 years.
Hatton, you were going to come here to West Coast in March of this year. It didn't happen. We're not going to tell anyone why. But you sent this bottle prior to your arrival to be here for the Whiskeys of the World, and I saved one bottle, and that's what we're drinking now. You're
Okay.
asking.
So that's a little bit younger. Yeah, that's a
You were
little bit
supposed to
younger.
get the kit. Did you get your kit? Joshua had.
Excuse me?
Joshua, you were supposed to get the kit with the samples that we're tasting today. You didn't get it?
No, I didn't get a kit.
Maybe it's at the Walgreens where you usually pick up things, but we'll send you one. Anyways, teasing.
Oh, it might be part of a larger box. I'm going to go check while you guys talk. I want to drink this with you guys.
I mean, I'll take you on the stream for a little bit. We do have a question from one of our viewers. Would you mind answering it, Aiden?
Absolutely. I'm
Okay,
here.
Let me just post it on the bottom. You'll see it on the bottom of the screen. It's about the yeast.
Oh, that's distilleries.
Distillers yeast?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
That's an M type. I mean M1 type. That's a little bit more fruity, and open. That's a distilleries.
Okay.
Are you kind of experimenting with yeasts at all, or you're strictly staying with the one?
Absolutely. I think even though we already have our core range portfolio and we have our set of recipes that we are using, we are still experimenting a lot with a different kind of barley and yeast. Not as a part of only for the core range, I think more of the experimental series that we have.
Let's watch Joshua open his meal.
Hey, we're going to do an unboxing too.
Oh, this is so cool.
Nice.
Hey, it's the Lego box. How cool.
Oh my God, Sam! Thank you so much. I saw this box and I thought it was something else because it was much bigger. I'm so
You thought you were
so excited to be drinking this pomegranate whiskey. Oh
Do
my
we know
gosh.
what the ABV is on this one?
You thought you were left out.
Did.
Do we know the ABV on this one?
55 to 60.
I think it's over 6 because he brought it at not touched. But usually what they do, and I like it, they would select the cask, and I'm sorry if I'm speaking for you, Aitan, and they would bring it to the ABV that they think this cask tastes best. It doesn't have to be natural strength of 60 plus. And we witnessed a couple of cask samples that were diluted to like 55.6. And excellent.
Thank you so much. This is what we do actually. Tomer is diluting and checking which ABV is the best, and we're taking 1 day at a time, meaning when you dilute it to, I don't know, 59, you wait several hours up to 1 day and then dilute it again, because we all want to, merge together and check what's the best ABV. How's the pomegranate cask? Please, guys, tell me what you think about it.
It's delicious.
I can't believe it's not quite 3 years old, and that it's this high as strength, because it's so well rounded and balanced. It feels older, and it doesn't feel as hot as 55 or 60%. It's really good.
And it doesn't feel like your traditional wine cask finish.
No, it doesn't have that tannin like
No.
from a red wine.
No. Yeah,
It
it doesn't have
has
that red
some
wine
dryness.
tang at the end. Yeah.
But it's not super dry. It's got some more like deep, like a dark fruit kind of thing.
Yeah, the pomegranate cask are going to be the first release of this series of products that are going to be 3 up to 4, 5 different releases a year. They're all going to change, meaning the label and the packaging are going to be the same, but it's going to be a different kind of crazy, in one hand, products, but in the other hand, the best cask we can find in the distillery. Small batches. We are really looking for that. That's going to be pricey, but I hope people are going to enjoy that.
Well, I can see it with so many local kinds of wines and that are not traditional to the United States or in lots of parts of the country. There can be all kinds of things, date, finishes, etrog.
That's too Jewish for us.
Yeah. But very Israeli though. You have very unique to the locale.
So as I told you, we have several products that is in our core range. We have the classic, and then we have the Element series. One of the Element series is red wine, Israeli wine. So meaning in our core range, we're going to have only red wine finishing or blending in the product. So we are going to use a lot of red wine cask from Israeli wineries. And the second release for the ImpEx series, the higher one, is going to be a white wine finish from Castell in Israel. So look for that. That's going to be really amazing.
Oh, here we go.
Yep, that's the Israeli red wine cask.
Joshua, can you give us an idea on things coming to the U.S.?
For M&H, yeah. So right now, it's currently in the States. There's of course the gin, which you see right there, Levantine Gin. So that is a single malt base. So, and Eitan, please correct me if I'm not stating this correctly, but it's a double distilled new make that's then put through another gin still, along with their 7 different herbs, 7 or 8. I may have that number wrong.
You're absolutely right. That's 8 different botanicals. It's based on our new make. So it's a triple distilled gin, twice for the new make and then another time for the gin. It's soaked for 8 hours, for 48 hours, and a different pot still, small alembic one that is only for the gin. So that's really unusual. Single malt gin is something you cannot find a lot. So there's advantage and disadvantage for that. It's a little bit more, there's a lot of characters, but it's strong. I think it's the gin that whiskey lovers are going to love.
We just reviewed this one, Angelo and I.
Yeah, I remember
Very
that.
nice.
Yep, very nice.
Really, really good.
Yeah. So when it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eitan.
No. You're doing much better job than me and 3 o'clock. Believe me.
You need to drink more.
Well, I just got more information from my fine admin in the office about this cask. So, guys, for you to know, it was distilled in 2018, cask number 1003, and you're enjoying something that is only 1 year and 4 months old.
No, okay, so that's a huge surprise. Yeah.
That's stunning.
You'd never know that, right? Isn't that amazing?
It's so good.
Joshua, if you didn't know, what would you guess the age on that?
75 years. No.
I said 74, but okay.
If I were to guess, I would definitely say that it's less than 10, but it feels like an 8-ish, 6 to 8 year old whiskey.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Looking forward to a bottle of that coming to the States.
So
much,
there. So there's the Levantine Gin, and so that's its standalone product. As far as whiskey goes, there's the classic that Eitan had mentioned before, and that is, well, wherever the bottle is. And then there's going to be the Element series. The one that's currently in the States right now is called Elements Sherry.
Would you like me to share the screen again?
Oh, do you want to?
I can share the screen. You can talk. I'll just share.
Yeah, okay.
Oh.
And that sold out of our warehouse as quickly as it came in, so we immediately placed a second order for more of that whiskey. And then to round out the Elements range, as Eitan had mentioned, we will have the Israeli red wine cask and then peated. And Eitan, am I correct in saying the peated is not peated spirit, but rather a whiskey that was matured in casks that held peated whiskey?
You're going to get the first batch that is more into the peated malt. So at first we did peated cask, meaning using cask from Isla, Ardbeg, and Lefroy. The first batch you're going to get is more towards the peated malt, and the next batch is going to be 100% peated malt. So we are going to use peated malt in that cask.
Fantastic. Really great.
That's great.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, please.
We set up the core range that everyone can find something that is suitable for their palate. So the classic is more 70% ex-bourbon, 20% SDR, a little bit of virgin oak, and it's much more mellow, smooth. It's to get to know milk and honey house style. And then you can choose if you like more red wine finish. I can tell you that the red wine was, for me, that was the biggest surprise because it's not my cup of tea. Whiskey that was matured in red wine cask. But this one, I think we got it for the perfect spot. So each one of the elements is based on the classic, meaning 50% of the blend of the elements is classic. And I think this 50% blend with red wine cask was really, really round and balanced. And for me, that was the biggest surprise. That was my biggest concern. If people are going to love the red wine or not, I think everyone can find something they like. The sherry is a huge story because it's the first one that is kosher and things like that. But it is a sherry cask. Peated again as well. The red wine, I think, is our biggest surprise.
Well, I think we're all looking forward to more releases coming this direction. It's very exciting.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Eitan, we thank you for staying up or getting up, which other,
or just never going to bed.
Going to bed.
Yeah, it's like before flights. You're afraid to miss a flight. So I know. I think I answered like 100 emails that I never answered before. So it's absolutely no problem. It was really my pleasure, and I really just hope that people are gonna love our products, and if not, please tell us why, and please just enjoy the rest of our products that are gonna come to the United States in 2 months up to 3 months from now.
Well, you're off to a fantastic start.
Definitely. So, thank you.
We're looking forward to more.
Shalom and Shana Tova.
Thank you, guys. Shana Tova as well.
Cheers, sir.
Cheers.
Shana Tova. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Just to add to the upcoming releases, we finally selected a cask for ImpEx, which is going to be STR finish. And this is cask number 0197, which is fantastic, we think. And again, it's kind of tribute to Dr. Jim Swan with his STR concept that he helped so many distilleries with. And we're looking forward to bring the replenishment of what we already sold out of, as Joshua mentioned. Nothing's left out of whiskeys today at the warehouse, which is very kind of boring and scary. No classic, no sherry elements. We're going to replenish that, and we will bring 2 more that Eitan mentioned, peated and Israeli red wine, and ImpEx cask.
And I should add that Joshua and Jason have got 2 bottlings for Single Cask Nation, and I have them both, and they're both delicious.
Cheers. Thank you. And thank you to Eitan for
Thank you,
for being
guys.
willing
Thank you,
to
sir.
sell us
Yeah.
those casks.
It
Cheers.
was really a pleasure. Sam, just to know that we already bottled your cask, and it's 100% fantastic. You're going to love the STI one, the ImpEx one.
Do me a favor, Ethan. Watch this, guys. Don't come there with the big glasses. Like, taste it by a little bit. Listen for us, for Americans. Please.
Bye, guys. Thank you so
All right,
much
cheers.
for having me.
Or good morning.
Thanks for joining us.
Oh, that was great. He was wonderful. And I think that pomegranate thing is just wacky and really delicious.
That's really, really good. That's really nice.
And I agree with you, Joshua. That does not taste like a 14-month-old whiskey or whatever it was.
Nope.
Right?
Nope.
Yeah.
And given the ABV, it's not super hot either.
No.
It's got a kick, but it's not. It's very, very good, easy to drink.
And interestingly, like Amrut or Paul John or Kavalan, all of those distilleries, like Milk and Honey, are located in countries that are too hot for you and me. But it makes it so that the whiskey matures at a much faster rate.
Mm-hmm.
So at 14 months, it tasted like a 6 or 8 year old. At 3 years old, it tastes like a 10, 12 year old. It really is remarkable.
Yep. I want to remind everyone who's watching now or later that we are here tonight also to help out the hospitality industry with another rally.org, which is an organization that helps out those in need in the hospitality industry, workers who have been displaced because of COVID or for other reasons. You can make your 501, if they're a 501c, and you can make a tax deductible donation to them. We ask you to go to their website and check out all the programs that they have and how you can help out an industry that's really hurting these days. I meant to ask Eitan how the industry is there. I'm guessing it's as I know Israel's had a pretty bad hit with COVID. I'm guessing that their bar and restaurant scene and retail scene has been hurt as well.
It's probably a very good guess.
So we're going to move on.
Yep, we're going to go from COVID to COVID.
Westward or maybe eastward, depending on your flight. We're going to move to the UK, to Wales. I'm not sure where our guest is actually located at the moment, but we have the global brand ambassador of Pandaren, the distillery in Wales. We welcome in David Cover.
David Cover.
David,
God, don't you read the
Hi,
email?
David.
Sorry,
Like
David.
David Coverdale.
Aaron can't read.
It is Kova, yeah. But you can
But
pronounce
Keir
it any way you
sure
want.
can
It
talk.
doesn't matter to me.
How
Where
are
are
you, sir?
Sorry?
Where are you?
I'm in Wales. Yeah, I'm based here in Wales. Although I travel a lot in the US or had done last year. I'm based here in Wales and sort of travel. I'm fairly near to the distillery. I'm about 20 minutes from the distillery, 20 minutes from the airport. Two of the main places in my life, really.
Well, we thank you for coming on and staying up and
That's all right.
take a chance and chat with us, guys. So talk about Pandaren. Give us a little bit of a intro on the distillery and take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, just thank you for having me on. It's great to be here. It's great to see everyone, and it's for a good cause as well, which is really, really nice to see. Here in the UK as well, the industry has been really hard hit. So it's good to see people sort of banding together and doing some good in the world. But yeah, Pandaren, it's a single malt whiskey, the only one really from Wales. And because of that, perhaps it's something a little bit unique, not just the fact that it's in Wales, but the way that we're producing the whiskey as well. We've been around since the year 2000, so a little bit longer than a lot of the other sort of new distilleries on the scene or world whiskies that have been on the scene. It's 20 years, actually this month, it's our anniversary this month, which is great. And it means that we've got a little bit more of a backlog of different whiskies, different casks that we can use and utilize these days. It's quite an extensive range. I mean, even in the US, we've got 8 different whiskies in the main range that we do, not including single casks and special editions and so on. So it's quite an extensive range. It can be quite a confusing range as well, with 8 different whiskies, all using sort of different types of casks or different strengths. But I believe the one that you guys have got there is the rich oak. Is that right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
You are correct.
So this is a fantastic whiskey, and as had already been mentioned, another Jim Swan distillery. Jim had been involved with us since the very beginning, pretty much since the year 2000 when we first started, and was a big part of creating the character of the whiskies, the distillery style, all of these different things, and really this whiskey is a big testament to his legacy as well, because this is a version of the whiskey that finishes in STR casks. Pretty much all of the whiskeys that we do start off in bourbon barrels, and then they're being finished in another type of barrel after that, Madeira or sherry, port. And this one, it's these STR casks, so shaved, toasted, and re-charred red wine barrels, which is pretty much a barrel type that Jim Swan kind of invented. Barrels have been re-charred before, but not these red wine barrels. And when you're using those, the red wine caramelizes on the inside of the wood. So that's going to bring this sort of caramel, toffee type of flavor that I find in this whiskey. Lots of sort of classic oaky notes coming out, coconut and vanilla as well, spices, a bit of dryness from the wood coming through at the end, I find. But generally, Penderyn's very light and quite delicate.
Oh, sorry. Where do the barrels come from?
So the actual red wine barrels we're buying from a cooperage, which is doing the re-charring for us, and they're getting them from a variety of wineries, mostly in Portugal and Spain. It's a bit of a debate, even at the distillery amongst us, about whether the red wine that's been in the barrels really makes a difference to the flavor that you're getting in this whiskey. Like, I really find that you don't get a lot of that red wine flavor coming through into this. For me, it's much more about the wood and about the oak. That's coming in. As I said, it does caramelize, but the type of wine perhaps doesn't necessarily matter too much.
So a few years ago, I didn't know that there was a Welsh whiskey. I didn't know Pandaren existed. You came to LA. We've done a couple of different events here in Los Angeles, and all of a sudden, I see it everywhere. It's really exploded.
Well, that's very much part of Sam's good work out there in the States. ImpEx's good work out in the States, doing some fantastic work, getting us a bit more sort of well-recognized in really all over, absolutely all over the US. And Penderyn's been doing really, really well, winning awards, and just getting the message out there as well. And that's a big part of what I've been doing, particularly last year, traveling around the States, doing tastings, doing events. I know all the ImpEx guys have been doing exactly the same stuff to get the word out there about this whiskey. I actually find it really refreshing to work in the States, because I find here in Europe, I go to Germany or even here in the UK and I say, oh, this is a Welsh whiskey. And people go, oh, really? A Welsh whiskey? Are you sure? there's a bit of skepticism or something behind that. And I find that pretty much everywhere I go in Europe. But in the States, there's this idea. I say, oh, it's a Welsh whiskey. And people go, oh, wow, a Welsh whiskey. That's something really cool. That's something exciting and new. That's something I want to try. So it's really good to have that sort of positive attitude right from the get-go.
I don't know, Joshua, what do you think? I think that there's this craft spirit here in the States, and we're willing to try, whether it's weird real beers or whiskeys from all of the world and other places, I think, maybe.
Yeah, there really has been a cultural shift. America was always the place of crappy beers and just, I'm not slagging Jack Daniels or Dickel or any of those, but it was just these big producers, ubiquitous things that they had their own personality, but nothing new, nothing special. Fast forward the clock, and now we've got over 2,000 micro distilleries producing different kinds of spirits. People are really interested. The beer scene here in Connecticut is insane. Yep. And I think, it's taken a couple of decades, but the American attitude towards trying something new and different is no one's scared to do it. In fact, they're jumping at the chance. And I'll echo what David says. When we first took on Pandaren, before David was coming over to the States, and I would do events here and there, and I would say, why don't you try this whiskey? It's from Wales. And people would say, what? Put it in my glass. What is that? And they taste it, and it's different. It doesn't taste like Scotch. It doesn't taste like Irish whiskey. It tasted like its own thing. And we would start getting people who would say, oh, my friend Mike told me to come over. Oh, Aaron told me to come over. Sam told me to come over. And then our table is just packed because they're interested in something they'd never heard of before. It's been great. It really has been.
I have
think the first one we tried was the Madeira cask, Mike?
It was a Madeira cask finish. We did a bottle share, and one of the guys who came left it behind. And my wife tolerates the buffoonery that goes on with the bottle share.
I have over here.
She tasted the Pandaren, and she said, that guy's welcome to come anytime he wants. The rest of them, not so much. But Sam, he's welcome all the time. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
I have a vendor for my real job, and who is in Wales and near Snowdon, and
Okay.
I've mentioned you to them, and you're well known. I mean, it's like I think there's a source of pride from what I gather.
Yeah.
We have this. There's this one Welsh. I don't know if there's one or more, but at least there's one Welsh distillery, and it's like the country's football team, right? And everyone is rallied around you. It seems like.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's really good. There are a few new distilleries sort of popping up here and there now, but it's taken a long time for it to catch on. I think there was a new distillery, Aberfoyles, started in 2017 or 2018. And there was another very small distillery, De Ville. But what we're looking at now actually is because where we are, we're in the Brecon Beacons, which is kind of in South Wales, in the mountains, a really beautiful area. But it's quite restrictive in terms of we can't expand the distillery a huge amount at the moment. So we're looking at stead in terms of building new distilleries. So that's really the projects that we're looking forward to now. Are these two new distilleries that we're going to be building in Wales, one on the very south coast, one on the north coast.
Producing similar things or different lines?
We'd like to keep them under the same branding, under the Pandaren brand, and yeah, so something similar, probably still single malt, using our sort of unique still, but also something maybe a twist on what we're doing at the moment. So perhaps a peated whiskey, a fully peated whiskey. Perhaps something more experimental, changing up with the sort of different styles that we can do. They'll be a bit smaller than the distillery that we're running at the moment at Pandaren, but we'll have to wait and see. They're planned for next year and the year after. But that's something to look forward to, definitely.
So you got to talk about the still.
I definitely do. It would,
mind-boggling. So you got to kind of walk us through it because we're not real smart.
Absolutely. I don't have a technical diagram here, I'm afraid, today, but I do have this. I'll put it up. Let me see there. You can see that this postcard of the still. So you can see it's got two columns to it, and of course, if anyone's online and you want to just Google Faraday still, Pandaren Faraday still, a technical diagram should show up in this stead. But this is essentially something like a sort of hybrid style of still. It's not quite a pot still. It's not really a column still either. It does run on a batch distillation. It's not continuous or anything like that. But it does have these plates on the inside of these columns, which are going to purify the alcohol really, really well. And this was invented by a guy called Dr. David Faraday. And there's only been 2 of these types of stills ever made in the world. And we own both of them. They're both at the distillery. So this is something that really makes Pandaren not just a whiskey in Wales that perhaps mimics more sort of Scotch or Irish kind of style. Yeah, there's a good diagram there. We really wanted to go out and create something that was a Welsh whiskey that had a really sort of different style to it as well. Something that people could remark on and say, well, that's a Welsh whiskey. And often when I'm talking to people at tastings, I'll say, I'm rubbish at blind tastings, but I really feel I could pick Pandaren out of a lineup because it has such a distinctive style. Because of the columns and the plates, the configuration, it means that the spirit that comes off the still is over 90% alcohol, which of course is really, really high for single malt. It's over 180 proof. And what that means is that the whiskey, the actual character of the spirit, very, very light, really, really delicate. As it comes off, but still very flavorful as well. I think some people will hear 90% alcohol and they think, oh, it's basically just vodka then. But actually it really comes through with a lot of flavor as well.
Well, it's funny you say that because about the proof and the high ABV, we were at, I'm going to name drop now. We were at Mark Gillespie's when Aaron was in town, and I said, "Oh, I'd really love to try the Pandaren, new make." He's like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa! That's 90 proof. That's 90 ABV. I don't think you want to." So it's a little on the dangerous side.
Absolutely, but if you're ever in Wales, pop by the distillery, or I don't know if we can get some samples out there to the US. I don't think they'll let us send 90% alcohol in the post, but it's very, very flavorful stuff, very potent at full strength. But you add a bit of water, and the fruitiness sort of starts to come out. It's very natural fruitiness, which I really think carries through into all of these whiskeys.
Josh, have you had it?
I have. I had it. I had it at the distillery. And what's interesting is I think David's spot on. At 90%, it's not only incredibly flavorful, but because it's basically pure alcohol, it also evaporates off of your tongue really quickly. So you get this sort of almost cotton candy sweetness coming along with the fruitiness. And it's really quite delicious. You wouldn't think there'd be a lot of flavor at 90% alcohol. And then when you dilute it, the oils come out, and then you have texture too, which surprises me coming off the still at such a high ABV. But it's really remarkable.
Is everything double distilled?
So the Faraday still is actually only one distillation. You're only putting it into the still once, but because it's going through the columns, of course, it's like doing multiple distillations in one go. And as I mentioned, we have 2 of those stills, but we actually installed some double pot stills as well a couple of years ago. So we've really got the room to create sort of different styles of whiskey at the distillery as well.
I remember when you were here, you had some, I think they're only distillery only expressions that kind of highlight someone famous in Welsh history. Are you guys still doing that?
Yeah, we're still crawling through those. It's called the Icons of Wales series. I'm afraid it's not available in the US.
Will there be a Tom Jones cask?
I'm sure there will be a Tom Jones cask at some point once we can talk to his people. So the idea is to celebrate, something unique about Wales or stories to do with Wales. The one that Joshua's got there is perhaps the most famous one. Yeah, it's like this velvet feel bottle. Bryn Terfel, this one was for. He's an opera singer, so of course it had to be theatrical, it had to be dramatic.
Yeah, you brought that to LA.
That's cool.
So we've done these sort of special limited edition whiskies like this to celebrate some of the stories of Wales, because I think that Wales, our media manager is fond of saying that Wales is like the secret Celtic nation. Everyone knows Scotland, everyone knows Ireland, and Wales perhaps isn't talked about so much. Or if people know about Wales, they don't necessarily know, about the stories about famous people, apart from maybe Tom Jones or Catherine Zeta-Jones.
How did it come about?
Sorry?
How did the distillery come about? What's the origin of it?
Well, really, it was just a couple of local people who had this sort of crazy idea to restart whiskey making in Wales. Then really that idea, the inception of that idea came about in a pub over a few drinks, I imagine. And the owner of the pub had found that there was a whiskey still that was in Brecons, that's pretty nearby the distillery. And this whiskey still was up for sale. He had a building and he knew there was water underneath the building. And really, it was just putting 2 together. He was saying, well, we've got this still, I've got the water, don't need much more than that to produce whiskey. Or so they thought at the time. And it wasn't even very expensive as whiskey stills go either, because the guy who owned it had gone bankrupt. So we really got very, very lucky. He got a few of his friends on board, and it's still privately owned distillery to this day. And those people who started are still involved as well. So it was this kind of crazy idea. If you think about the year 2000, when we started, there's no world whiskey scene at that point. Japanese whiskey wasn't big at that point. Your Yamazaki and Hakushu were sitting on the shelves gathering dust, and English whiskey distilleries hadn't really started up. Kavalan in Taiwan hadn't started up. So it really was this crazy idea that whiskey in Wales could be a thing again. But they really went for it. And when we released the whiskey in 2004, I think people were still skeptical. It's taken a long time for that momentum to build and the whiskies to become a little bit older, become a little bit better. And I feel like that momentum's really sort of gained and gained and gained, and there's really no stopping it now. And we've just been winning award after award. I can't even keep up. I think last week we won some more awards. I'm sure there's a big bucket at the distillery somewhere just full of gold medals, which is just great because it really fills us with confidence that that it's going somewhere and that the whiskey's doing really well.
Well, I have to say, our first two guests here tonight, one from Tel Aviv and one from Wales, Sam and Joshua. This speaks highly of you guys and the kind of interesting distilleries that you are bringing to the United States. It's really fascinating that we're finding these kinds of interesting whiskeys from everywhere that you wouldn't think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone's got a unique story as well. All the whiskies are different, all fantastic quality. I think everything that ImpEx is bringing in is fantastic. And I find that something that I think is really good as well is that some of these single casks that are being released through ImpEx are just utterly incredible as well. We've done a few that have been released this year and one or two last year, and all of them have just been absolutely stunning. So if you keep your eyes peeled, there are some goodies out there for sure. Because I find Pandaren does so well at cask strength as well.
There you go.
Man,
yeah.
nice.
And these are the only Pandarens that have ever been released with age statements as well. These single casks for the USA for ImpEx. Very, very limited, of course, and they tend to sell out very quickly. But if you see one on the shelf, absolutely grab it because they're just stunning.
Joshua, what's the ABV on that? Was that 60%?
750. No, it's 60.4% alcohol. Yes. And you would never
Nice.
you would never know it. It's like just drinking a glass of tropical fruit. It's just stunning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
David, you
I'm glad you have ABV. You asked Joshua what's the proof on that is. You're going to have an enemy for the rest of the time.
I can't multiply by 2. It doesn't work for me.
David, I have a bottle of the Celt behind me, somewhere behind me.
Yeah.
Talk about the peated expressions and where you're getting. I know you're not doing any maltings yourself, but talk about how you guys are working with peat.
Well, for us, this is something that really started as an accident because when we were talking to Jim Swan about the style of the whiskey and what we wanted to do, what barrels that we wanted to use, we said, no peat whatsoever. We don't want the whiskey to be smoky. Peat is Scotland's thing, and we don't want to mess with that. We want to have our own very light, delicate, fruity whiskey, and that's going to be the style. We can use whatever different types of barrels, but no peat. Okay, that's absolutely fine. And somehow there was a bit of a mix-up at the warehouse when we bought some barrels in a big batch from a broker, and some barrels were bought from a particular distillery on Islay, and these barrels were filled without having been checked. So Jim Swan then comes down to taste some of the whiskies, or nose and taste some of the whiskies, and he comes to these batch of casks and he goes, "Whoa, what the hell's happened? These whiskies are peated." Well, we didn't do anything. He said, hold on, actually, they're quite good. So maybe we can release them as some kind of limited edition and see what happens, see if the market likes them, see if people like them. And one of the whiskies actually ended up winning an award and did really well with a whiskey critic. So we decided to keep it then as sort of a more permanent part of the range. And they've done really, really well for us. But it's just coming from the barrels. I think originally it was KIlchoman Distillery, of course, as we've mentioned, another Jim Swan project and another fantastic distillery. And there was some kind of mix up there with the casks where we'd gotten some. Since then, we've swapped over to Lefroy, just because KIlchoman produced some different styles of peating. Some of the 100% Islay stuff is perhaps less peaty than their normal peated barley that they're getting. So there was a bit of variation there with the casks. So we swapped over to Lefroy because it's always just heavily peated. It's always going to give you that same really peaty flavor. But because it's just coming from the wood, it's giving a much lighter style of that peated flavor. It's
I love
a bit
it.
more of a breakfast peat.
Thank you.
Water break. Yeah, I think the Celt is really delicious. And I can't remember what you said. Or told us the barrel on that, but it's not over the top. It's a nice addition to rounding out the flavor.
Yeah, so this one, the Celt is one of the ones that we're finishing in Laphroaig barrels. And for me, it almost gets, rather than the sort of very heavy medicinal and peaty flavors that you'd get from Laphroaig normally, it's more the salinity, that saltiness that's coming through into the whiskey instead, which I think is really nice. It kind of combines well with sort of very crisp, sort of fresh fruitiness.
Joshua, maybe you could talk about what's coming soon to the States from these guys.
Right. So as David had mentioned, there's 8 core products in the range. There's 2 series. There's the Dragon series, which is, behind you. One of them's behind you. That's the Celt.
Yep.
So there's Myth, Legend, and Celt. Those are the 3 in the Dragon range. 43% alcohol, non-chill filtered, and like David said, all different finishing casks. And then the Gold series is the Madeira, which was really their flagship. The Rich Oak, which we're tasting tonight. The Portwood, the Sherry Wood, and then the Peated, which the Peated is almost like an even more delicate version of Celt. And so that's the core. And then you saw one of the single casks, that was the Portwood. That was a 12-year. We did a 10-year Madeira. That one sold out just as fast as the Portwood did. We've got 2 other single casks coming. There's going to be a 15-year-old ex-bourbon. And then, Sam, can you remind me of the other cask?
Sure, the 13 years old rejuvenated or STR cask. Again, kudos to Jim Swan. Both are fantastic casks. Not too much from this 15 years old bourbon. It's like 170 bottles or so. But David, correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is the oldest Pandaren expression released.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So, and as David mentioned, we were able to convince the distillery to put the age statement on the bottles, and as you noticed, the ABV, Joshua, you did, and the number of the bottle is written by hand by Aista, who is a master blender, and I think her signature is on each label. So it's very dear to us, and it's a great project that shows how far distillery can go when it comes to the quality. So it's a great, complement to the core range that Joshua. Also, I wanted to mention, David, if you don't mind, when you said that it's much easier for you to kind of represent the brand in the U.S. While we have a very open-minded consumer, we also have a great support from Welsh government and from people with Welsh roots that live here in the U.S. It's just incredibly supportive group of people, and very proud of what their own country can produce. So that makes all our job much, much easier.
David, I want to thank you for staying awake this late. This has been a visit. I had one last question. How has COVID affected you and the distillery there?
Well, yeah, it's been very difficult. Of course, the distillery adapted very quickly. Really, that we started producing hand sanitizer because there was a big shortage, of course, near the very beginning, and so we'd been selling that, and people weren't really buying a lot of whiskey. Actually, now the last couple of months, we've seen a big spike in sales here in the UK as people are perhaps resorting to whiskey at this point. For me personally, I've been furloughed for the last couple of months. It's only just now really that I'm starting to do a little bit more work again with these sort of online tastings. So no, it's been an absolute pleasure to come on here with you guys tonight. And as I said, it's for a really great cause. And I just always love talking about whiskey anyway. Also, it's not quite as late here. It's only 1:30 in the morning, so I'm not quite as bad as Tel Aviv.
David
has a newborn son, which is maybe 3 weeks, by the name of August.
Yeah, exactly. It's he's pretty much 1 month old now. So I'd probably be up at this time anyway. Thank you.
You're going to get your time in half an hour, so you might as well stay up.
Hey, you know what's great? You're going to have plenty of excuses to drink coming up.
You'll need
Exactly. Yeah, it's very true.
Hey, Joshua, I think when we
Yeah.
met many years ago in Philly with Mike, I believe you told us you started the blog when your first daughter was born, or second, right around that time.
Yeah, right. So there we go. So the blog started when the second daughter was born.
There you go.
The drinking started when the first daughter was born.
Bingo.
That's
See?
right. It's all yeah.
Yeah.
See?
We all
Good. That's good.
David, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
David.
very much, guys. Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yakida.
Thank you,
Yakida.
David.
Cheers.
Yakida.
Well, that
All
was
right.
wonderful.
Did
He's a
you
real-
did you catch what he said at the end? Yakida.
No.
That's the version of Neshlancha in Welsh.
Yeah, it's Welsh for cheers or slanja or yeah.
Spelled with a bunch of L's, isn't it?
I think there's 30 L's and 7 D's.
Yes. And they're like jumbled around, like an eye chart.
Hey,
Yeah,
It's just
exactly.
gibberish. It's gibberish.
that
It's not a
town
language.
now?
It's gibberish.
Isn't that the town with the longest names in Wales?
That's right, it is.
Right? I think.
27 letters long. I remember my parents went there when I was a kid.
Yep.
Brought back this picture of the town sign, and it's just an eye chart, just horizontally.
Oh, good fun.
So
Good
when
fun.
we were talking about doing all this a few weeks ago, we were exchanging all these emails with Sam and Josh. How to do this. It started off small, and then Joshua got involved and started adding names, and just getting long. The list of guest lists got longer and longer. And Don Rickles he's passed away, so he couldn't show up, and Gleason's gone, so he couldn't show up, and
then Carl Reiner's gone too. We couldn't get him.
all gone. So
Oh,
Tough sledding. Yeah.
we thought about how right now, especially, this is just a kind of crazy time in the world and in this in the industry. I know I have friends in the hospitality industry, bartenders who are not working and don't know when they're going to work again. I have friends that have bars locally that are not reopening anytime soon, it looks like. And we thought about how could we make this a little bit bigger event and not just talk about whiskey, but talk about the industry, how it's affected by COVID. And through a friend of ours here in LA, we found out about this organization called Another Round, Another Rally, and who helps out the hospitality industry. And the person, there's another connection here, Joshua. I'm not sure you know this. The person that is the CEO, Amanda Gunderson, who's our guest here, going to speak about the organization. She actually works for Beam Suntory. And she, I believe, told me that our connection here is that she, I believe, was hired into Beam by our friend Johnny Mundell.
Oh wow!
So,
Look at that.
without any further ado, we are going to bring in Amanda Gunderson from Another Round, Another Rally.
let's do it. Hello, Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
How are you? Happy to be here.
How you doing?
Welcome. Thank you for coming on tonight. You're here in Los Angeles, right?
Yes. And I have to say that if I'm your fourth in line after Rickles, Gleason, and Reiner, I feel pretty honored to be here tonight.
Well, they weren't available. I'm glad you are alive. So talk about this organization and how it started, and because it didn't just start for COVID, it's a little bit older than that, right?
Yeah, so we started this about 2.5 years ago. A friend of mine named Travis Nass, who is also a longtime veteran of the industry, that's him right there. He and I were sitting around talking about 2.5 years ago, just about this kind of hole that we saw in the industry, that there's this piece that was missing. So we decided we wanted to start this nonprofit to raise 2 buckets of money. The first one, which is really where we thought we were going to be focusing the primary amount of our time, is on education and professional development. And so we wanted to focus on everybody in the industry, but we had a really special focus and love for the people who are the most underrepresented. I think, we talked about this the other day, that the numbers are really staggering. For every $10 that a white man makes in our industry, a Black woman makes about $4. So it's really quite a big discrepancy there. So we were really, intending to do, and we have done some scholarship giveaway for people who are looking to develop their careers professionally and get into some of those more higher paying positions, those more white tablecloth positions. The other bucket of money that we were putting together is for emergency funding. And when we started that, it's because most bartenders we knew did not have health insurance. Really, unless you work at like a hotel or something, you're not going to get health insurance with your job. And so that emergency funding is something that we kind of had set up for if you were in a car accident, or if you had an unexpected illness come to your family, or if your child got ill, or if you were a manager and you had an undocumented worker that was potentially being deported and you needed help for legal fees, just really any emergency that could pop up in the hospitality industry. And we were getting ready to launch. We took 2 full years to really put our programming together and get everything into place. And we were ready to launch at the end of March at Bartenders Weekend, which is a big bartender event in San Diego that happens every year. This was the 8th year, I believe, that they're in business. And we were going to have this huge bartending competition called Deuces, which is a synchronized bartending competition. So if you could imagine, maybe two people might be making a cocktail to the entire choreography of Thriller or something like that. So really just a fun, entertaining night. And we had a drag queen who was going to come down and host the whole thing. And we had a number of brands involved. And of course, about 10 days before we were set to launch there at Bartenders Weekend had to shut down, and our whole industry had to shut down that weekend. And so we just really went into go mode. We're really fortunate. We have a couple of people on our board of directors who, one of them, for a living, he works as a consultant for small companies that are growing from small to large. So we had somebody there holding our hand through the growing pains of the first couple of weeks. And then we also have somebody on our board of directors who runs a $44 million nonprofit in Oregon called the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And so she was really able to help us put the verbiage together and the lettering together to get the donations to come in. So right away in the beginning, we were able to give away about $1 million in grants, in special relief grants, COVID relief specifically, and about half of that, but I would say about 50% of that we've been able to give away to some of the undocumented workers who are ineligible for federal funding, but who are our brothers and sisters in the weeds, working in the restaurants and really the machine that keeps everything running. And then so far to date, we've brought in about $3.5 million, and we have a number of wonderful things that you can donate money to. We have the main fund, which is always very important. It keeps the machine going, and we split those funds out to our various campaigns. But if you wanted to donate to a specific campaign, we also have a tip jar, which is just the overall COVID relief. We have one that's focused on LGBTQ in our industry. And then we also have one that is specific for Black-owned bars and restaurants that people can apply for grants to rebuild. And we have one for Black mental health as well. So we do have a number of specific initiatives. And then you can also go on there and donate and say, you know what, I want to donate to just the regular fund, but I'd like to keep this in Arizona, or I'd like to keep this in Pennsylvania. There's a drop-down bar for all 50 states, and you can kind of pick where you'd like the money to stay. So,
wow. So this must be crazy for you in the last 6 months. Things dramatically. You must have people calling you all the time or contacting you. They need help, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, we had, in that first week, we had, I want to say 70,000 applicants, like right in that first week or the first 2 weeks. And so we did $500 grants. That's what comes out of our tip jar. We settled on that number because we felt like it's, maybe not going to pay your rent, but it is going to maybe keep your lights on, keep your cell phone running, get your internet running, put a little food in your belly, maybe some diapers on your baby, whatever it is, was a substantial enough amount of money that it could be helpful, but a small enough amount that we could really spread the funding around. But still, I mean, if you do the math, even with a couple $1 million, we couldn't quite get to 70,000 people. So we've had to really put people in order of importance. And some people, the way I heard somebody actually at USBG say it, I thought was really good, which is that everybody got caught with their foot in a bear trap, but some people were waist deep in a meat grinder. There's just some people who had both. People in the family, are in the hospitality industry and they've got kids at home, or they're taking care of the elderly, or they get sick themselves, or there's pre-existing conditions involved. There was some people who are just kind of finding themselves to be trapped in an abusive relationship right at the beginning of COVID that just needed a little bit of push to get out of it. There was just a number of factors that could kind of pull you out and push you to the top. And then, of course, we had intended to give about half of that money to our undocumented family members in the hospitality industry because, like I said, they're not eligible for federal funding. And so that was kind of an automatic push to the top. And that was a lot of work for us. Everything we've put out so far has been both in Spanish and English. And, getting people to trust us. The English applications had been relatively easy because people could fill them out online and then we could process them and move along. But Spanish language, people were really reluctant to give us their information online. We got a little pushback. People thought we might be a scam from ICE right at the beginning. So we had to move everything over the phone, which took quite a bit longer. And so we had to set up a whole bank of volunteers that were able to handle that. We ended up getting a group of MBA students from Stanford come and help us out with that piece of what we were doing. And so we were able to kind of divide and conquer. But, nobody in any industry was prepared for what COVID has done to our society, but particularly in the hospitality industry, we would have never dreamed that 15 million people would lose their jobs in our industry on the same day. So we really, in that first couple of weeks of COVID, it was real triage mode and we had to really sort it out. But now we've got things really kind of moving in a nice little running machine, and it's something that you can kind of pick and choose where you'd like to have your money go.
That's great. Sam and Joshua, you guys must see it on your side. And Amanda, from her regular day job, you must see that kind of thing with your customer base as well. So affected, right?
Yes, it's really scary. We're going into a fall that is really, really tough. Hopefully 2021 will be the year that, the Phoenix is reborn. But I think we just need to go through the next few months. Some of the numbers that I've heard kicked around are that 30 to 40% of the restaurants and bars that we know and love just won't make it, won't come back. I'm sure everybody here has a story about 1 or 2 or 10 places that you know and you've loved that is just gone forever. And it's jaw-dropping to see that happen. A lot of people do not have their jobs back. When you see those big national numbers of where the unemployment really stands, that's primarily hospitality industry. It's us and other businesses that have a lot of people involved. So musicians and, cruise ships and airlines and stuff like that. So we're still really hurting, and we're going to keep hurting into the fall. And it's an interesting discussion talking about the legalities around what's happening. So the one state that I know of that has made cocktails to go permanent is Iowa, of all states. You'd think they might be a little bit more conservative than some other places, but they're really taking the lead there in Iowa. I know Texas has made cocktails to go sort of an indefinite legal thing. So we'll see how long that goes, how long that works. We definitely have cocktails to go here. But the last I heard, which was just a few days ago, Oregon still did not have cocktails to go. And it's a particularly rainy state. And so people up there are really worried about what's going to happen when there's no use of patio anymore in the winter and there's no cocktails to go. I talked to somebody who kind of his route is mostly, dive bars and stuff up there in Portland. And he said that 40% of his route was closed down. So, we really need to, when you see these things online, if you see somebody in the industry post something that says, please sign this petition for cocktails to go, please sign it. It's a lifeline for some of these bars and restaurants right now to just basically, break even on the smallest level. So,
Joshua, you must see that in your world as well.
Yeah, everything Amanda is saying. What she's saying is being seen. I could not say it any better. And it really highlights what Sam was saying before at the very beginning. It impacts. No one has been let go, and same with JVS. No one has been let go. However, everybody in the bar, not everybody, but a lot of people in the bar industry, in the restaurant industry, who are not only our customers, but our friends, are losing their jobs, are losing their businesses, are really, really hurting. And there are, some states that are stepping up, changing laws, whether it's temporary or permanent, to try to help out a little bit, and that's nice to see. But man, it's scary out there. It is absolutely scary out there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for doing this. This, what you do now, and what kind of, what you're involved in, you need it more than ever. Our reps from both companies, some of them come from bartender background. They used to be bartenders. And of course, they have a lot of friends that they keep connected, and some of them they call on. And it's just very, very, fascinating to see what you guys do and how much you need it. So thank you for that.
Oh, anything that we can do. I mean, thank you guys for having us on. It's such an honor to be a part of this tonight for all of the above reasons. It's wonderful to have another round, another rally, just the little ticker running across the bottom there, just every little bit helps. I would say that if you're wondering the best way to help at another round, another rally, we would, obviously we would love as much money as we can. We could always use volunteers, but we're looking right now for monthly donors because we think that this is going to really be a good, 3 to 5 year recovery. We're going to start turning our sights, like I said, in 21 towards more professional development and relief, but we want to really add that professional development piece just as people start getting back in. We don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know how many of our soldiers are going to be left. We don't know how many people will have moved on to other industries or how many bars will actually reopen. So we will start to move our sights towards getting people back in line and getting people back to work in 2021. So even if it's $5 a month, $10 a month, something like that, we appreciate it. So.
And we've seen this before too. We highly recommend when you're out, if you do get cocktails to go, tip a lot. Tip a lot. I mean, let's try to help these people out. Tip more. You're not spending dollars on which you normally would spend because restaurants and bars are closed. So when you do tip more to help out. It's just devastating to see all these folks that have just lost their jobs. Amanda, just a quick story. I told Joshua before you came in, you have a connection to our friend Johnny Mundell.
I do. I've known Johnny for a really long time. He actually was not the hiring manager who hired me, but he, because he works at Maker's Mark now, and I work for James B. Beam Distilling Company. So everything that comes out of Jim Beam, so Jim Beam, Knob Creek, Booker's, Baker's, Legion, Basil Hayden's, Little Book. We've got a beautiful release of Little Book 4 out right now. So I represent that particular portfolio, but I've known Johnny for a really long time. And so I remember I was like in a hotel room actually in San Francisco when we finally touched base, and he was like, I'm going to make sure that, your resume gets into the right hands. So I really do owe it to Johnny Mundell that I was able to be in the right place at the right time to get the interviews that I needed to get to be in the position that I'm in now. I really love that guy, wealth of knowledge, but also so funny. I just recently presented with him about a month ago, and I just forget how dry and hilarious he is. He's so funny. Just with a straight face, just says the craziest stuff. So I adore him.
Joshua, I think I have a recollection that he and Jason are from the same town in Scotland, right? Or nearby? Ayrshire?
Yeah. So Jason's from Ayr.
Yeah.
And Johnny's from Ayrshire, but I don't think it's specifically in Ayr, but
nearby.
in the Shire where the hobbits are.
Right.
But Johnny is so near and dear to me because he. So Amanda, I don't know if you know this. Me and my business partner Jason hosted a swim around Isla called the Great Isla Swim, and Johnny was one of the swimmers.
I remember when he swam that. I didn't realize
Yeah.
you did that, but I remember him doing that. That's amazing.
And just seeing him being near him, you just have to be within his aura,
Yeah.
and it's life changing. He is something else.
Yeah, it's so funny. I have another weird connection to him. My husband and I were just talking about this the other day. So my husband is Scottish. He grew up in the Scottish Borders area, like in the southeast coast of Scotland. But he went to college in Glasgow and lived there for 20 years before moving here to the United States. And so he's an artist. He went to Glasgow School of Art. And we were just talking about it the other day. He was like, I can't believe that guy was bartending at whatever bar he said, I don't remember, while I was at Glasgow School of Art. It was a bar that my husband and his friends used to frequent in Glasgow while he was in college. So it's such a funny connection. But my husband's very tall and very slender. And the first time Johnny ever met him, another mutual friend of ours said, hey, that's Amanda's boyfriend over there. He's from Scotland. You should go say hi. And he came over and picked him up, put him on his shoulder and said, Scotland, 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 while we were in this bar together. He's just such a crazy guy. So, but that was a welcome to America for my husband, for sure.
That's hilarious. John.
He's called Johnny the Scot.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
I took my wife to Whiskey Live a number of years ago here in Los Angeles, and Johnny was at a booth, and he pulled me aside, and I didn't really know him. I knew of him, and he made me recite Robert Burns poems.
Yeah.
In front of all these people, and I was completely embarrassed and he wanted a Scottish accent, and I can only do an Irish accent, and it was really embarrassing. And, oh, Johnny.
Oh, he's so clever. I love him so much. I saw him do a Burns night once at the Evely up here in Hollywood in Los Angeles. And he was in the back bar, and the deal was that you could get a free bit of a dram of scotch and some oysters, and he would teach you how to put a little bit of the scotch in the oyster with the, mignonette and all of that. But you had to stand up and read a poem first. And it was Burns night. So we actually stole that from him. We celebrate Burns night here in my house. We put a little wood to the fire pit, and we have our friends come over, and we ask everyone to bring a poem if they're comfortable to read it. And my husband makes haggis and a soup called Cullen Skink.
Love the Cullen Skink.
The first time he ever said that to me, I was like, I'm right here. Don't call me names.
He said skink, not the. I'll leave it alone.
Neeps and Tatties is another one that he makes. So we make a bunch of Scottish food. We have our friends over to read poetry, but we stole that idea directly from Johnny the Scot because he was doing that at Evely. So,
well, Amanda, we cannot thank you enough for coming on and all the work you're doing. This is, it's so necessary. It's so important. There's so many people out there that need help.
Keep our bars alive.
My pleasure. And yes, let's keep the bars alive. And, the fight isn't over. It's going to keep going straight through the fall and into the spring. And so just any little bit helps. So thank you guys so much for having us on today. We couldn't be more humbled and more honored to have been a part of this today.
Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Another rally.org. Please donate. Thank you, Amanda.
All right. Thank you. And thanks, ImpEx, for bringing everybody in tonight. What a great group.
Cheers. Our pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Isn't it weird how there's all these connections? It's just insane.
Yeah.
Hey, can you drop a few names? I need to get that count over 10.
I'll let Joshua do it.
No, he doesn't count. He's at 9.
I think you're at 9.
Oh, I did.
I think you're at 9.
You need a 10. You need a minion. A minion of West Coasters.
Hours of this. Give me a minute.
I'll give you 10.
I think Aaron's record was 3 dozen once.
10. Hi.
3 days ago was Bino's birthday.
11.
And 6 years ago, we were at Lagavulin on his birthday.
11. Hang on. 11. Is that whiskey still in the warehouse?
Did Joshua just freeze up?
He might have.
Here.
Oh, okay.
Did you hear me?
You know what it was? He was stunned by your name dropping ability.
He was stunned by Bino's name or Lagavulin?
I don't know.
I as soon as I hear Bino's name, I just shut down.
That's
Well, we don't have Bino, but we do have someone in the on deck circle.
We do, and we are now going northward on our
space side
world tour. Sorry,
where are we going? Is it space side?
Space side. We're going to David Keir from GlenAllachie, which is a newish distillery and now part of the ImpEx line. And David is the sales and marketing director for GlenAllachie. So we welcome David into the group.
Let's bring him in. Hang on a second. Let me welcome the GlenAllachie so we know what we're looking at, and let's bring David in. All right. Hello, David. Hello, David. Wait a minute. There we go. Sorry.
Hello, guys. Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yes. Good
Thank
evening.
you all.
How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you.
Uh-oh.
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 Oh. Can you hear me okay, guys?
Yes. You froze up for a second there.
No worries. Okay. I've got my everything else is off in the house, so you've got my full internet connection here. Mind you, it is 2 a.m. So if there's someone else up, then I'll be very surprised.
Any kids on Netflix or anything?
No kids. The only thing I'm worried about in this house tonight is waking up the dog. So if we get a lot of noise in the background, we'll know it's this chief of security coming to life. So, guys, thank you very much for having me along tonight. I'm absolutely delighted to be part of an event like this. I was listening in there, caught the tail end of David's, obviously listening into what Amanda was saying. And yeah, I think I can only echo what Amanda was saying, what you guys have been touching on. It's very difficult, very challenging times out there for our friends and colleagues and partners in the hospitality industry. So thank you very much for ImpEx, another round, another rally, booze dancing. Thanks for organising this. I'm absolutely delighted to come on board and do my little bit and check this out. Scotsman with his wallet. I have got the donate page up, so I will be making a donation as soon as I'm finished.
Thank you, David. So give us a little thumbnail on GlenAllachie.
Okay, well, Aaron, it's interesting you introduced it. You said it's a kind of new distillery, and I think that is a fantastic entry point because we as a company, the GlenAllachie Distillers Company, we are not even 3 years old. We're just coming up to our 3rd anniversary as a company. But our distillery is actually over 50 years old. It was actually built in 1960. 1968, I think, was when the first spirit ran off the stills. But it was built exclusively for use in blended Scotch whiskies. And over the years, it's been owned by some of the iconic whiskey companies. Latterly, the distillery GlenAllachie was owned by Pernod Ricard, and they were using it exclusively in White Heather blended Scotch whisky, Chivas Regal, Royal Salute, and I think everybody knows that the blenders, the whiskey companies do a little bit of cask swapping around, etc. So I'm sure some GlenAllachie has found its way into some other iconic whiskey brand. So distillery's been around for over 50 years, but never been available as a single malt until we bought it. And I say we, the company headed up by Billy Walker, who I'm sure some of you may recognise the name from Benria, Glendronach era. Billy was the previous owner and master blender at those distilleries. So Billy and his partner Tricia, a few other people came together, bought the distillery from and we brought it out as a single malt. So yeah, we're a 3-year-old whiskey company, but we've got 50-odd thousand casks of GlenAllachie single malt. Yeah, it's an incredible number, and stock going back to the 1970s. So we've been able to launch, when we launched our first single range of GlenAllachie single malt back in the summer of 2018, we came out with a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 25-year-old. But the company at that point wasn't even a year old. So for a new whiskey company, we're in a tremendously fortunate position.
So talk about Billy Walker and his legendary status in the industry.
Well, Billy's my boss, so I better be nice. No, I think Billy has been in the industry for many, many years. Started out as a blender. I think it was with Inverhouse way back in the day. He's been at Angus Dundee. He was production director at Burn Stewart Distillers But I think where the story really starts to get exciting is, I think it was 2004, when Billy ventured out on his own and purchased the Benriach distillery, again from Pernod Ricard, and took that back into private ownership. Company grew. He added GlenAllachie Distillery, he added GlenAllachie Distillery, and I think then his reputation for, I think, taking, not sleeping giants, that's maybe a bit of a cliche, but taking unknown distilleries. And because he'd been in the industry for so many years, he knew these distilleries, he knew the stock portfolio, very much like GlenAllachie. He knew GlenAllachie had a huge stock portfolio. He knew it had old stock. He'd been a blender. He knew it was great whiskey. He knows the distilleries that he can work with and make an impact on. And through his connections in the industry, he was able to buy these and I say, take them into private ownership. And then start to work his magic on these casks. He's got a tremendous reputation for working with different woods. I saw a post on a Facebook page the other day. Someone had put in brackets behind his name, Billy Walker, Sherry is God. He loves to work with sherry casks, PX particular, but of Oloroso. So, but you know, he's a hugely passionate whiskey maker. I won't mention his age, but he's got a couple of decades on me. And you know, when he's gone up to visit GlenAllachie, he gets up, God knows when, drives up the road up to Speyside, because GlenAllachie is a Speyside distillery. It's maybe a 3-hour drive. Billy is there before the production guys arrives at the distillery at the same time as the production guys. He's so dedicated and so passionate about whiskey making. And you know, some of the things that we've done at GlenAllachie, he's initiated at GlenAllachie, and what we're working on, what you guys are going to come to fruition, and the months, the years ahead, is hugely exciting. I say it's we're a very unusual whiskey company. You know, I'll give you one indication. Our wood budget, our budget for casks for this year, was $1.2 million just to buy casks. Now that's a huge amount of money for a new start whiskey company, particularly when you think we're so small. GlenAllachie is a big distillery. It can actually produce, if we wanted to, we could produce over 4 million litres of alcohol per year. So it's big, yeah. To put that in perspective, that's give or take 4 times the size of GlenDronach, 4 times the size of Bruichladdich, etc. Goodness knows how many times the size of KIlchoman. We've shut that production down. We have reduced it right down to, I think this year, we're going to produce just over 500,000 litres of alcohol. So we fill about 100 casks a week. Why are we spending so much money? Billy is obsessed with about getting the very best wood, the very best casks, getting our spirit laid down, taking the spirit in different directions, experimenting. You know, he's like a kid in a Swedish shop just now. He's got this distillery, all this stock, and yeah, he's having the time of his life. And yeah, I think we all are at GlenAllachie. It's been a helter-skelter of a journey so far. Yeah, and it's been good fun.
It feels like he's trying to almost reverse engineer to be a craft distiller.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And we've got, I'm trying to pick the words carefully here, that a lot of new start whiskey companies have, you know, whiskey making is an expensive process. You know, you've got to buy casks, you've got to buy raw materials, you've got to pay wages, you've got to lay it down for years to come. We're in a fortunate position that we're financially secure at GlenAllachie. We've got all the stock, so we can do all these experiments. Here's one. Okay, so GlenAllachie is unpeated. We're doing our first peated ever distillation. Okay, and I'll try not to make this too geeky. I can see Josh getting all excited there that thought about some geeky whiskey chat. When we're doing our peated, swapping from making unpeated to peated whiskey, we're actually draining out all the low wines, the semi-peated. When we're doing a switching from an unpeated to a peated distillation, we actually drain out all the low wines, which are unpeated, so that when we do our first ever peated distillation, the barley, everything in that is 100% peated. We're also doing we've put new pipe work in so that we can take a cut of a cut. We can do little things like we've got something called fractation. we've taken a cut of a cut. When you get to the back end of whiskey making, when you're running whiskey, making peated whiskey, that's where you start to get some of your really heavier, oilier, more phenolic notes.
Yep.
So we've added extra structure to the distillery that we can take a little cut out of there and just take that aside and put it in some special casks. It's just experiments like that. I've spotted, wood casks I've touched on, different barleys, different yeasts. We've got a huge distillery running at tick over, absolute tick over. And here's another one. We're fermenting for over 160 hours, which to best of my knowledge is the longest in the industry. There might be one or two there that's longer, but to best of my knowledge, that's the longest fermentation time. So what we will mash on a Monday won't get distilled till the following week. And how can we do that? Because we've got so many washbacks that we can just put to use. That we can, we're not in a hurry, so we can put there and we can let the fermentation run for such a long time. Billy and Richard, our operations director, so that's given us more esters, which of course should give us a little bit more flavour, richer, fruitier spirit. But it's an experiment. Let's see what happens. Let's see how it goes. I could go on and on, but I'm worried I might be boring you.
Maybe let's try some.
I've been trying.
What is this? Is this the GlenAllachie a 10-year-old?
Batch 2.
Batch 2.
Batch 2. Tell us about batch 2.
Okay. So this is batch 2. So I mentioned there that we launched with the 10, 12, and 18 and 25. GlenAllachie, the 10-year-old cask strength came about in quite an unusual way. Myself, Billy, Lindsay, we were up in a warehouse. It wasn't long. We bought the distillery in October, might have been November. I remember it was very, very cold. We were going through the warehouses and we were sampling at that younger GlenAllachie. It was 2008, 2009, 2010, 11, 12. And everything that was coming out of the cask was just drinking so well. And I remember Billy just saying, we could borrow this right now. Kind of looked at each other and thought, well, why don't we? So the 10-year-old cask strength, batch 1 as it was then, which is 57.1, was added to the range just there and then. So, yep, good man, Joshua. Thank you very much. So this is batch 2 we've got. It's 54.8% ABV. Everything we do is 46% ABV or higher. It's unchill filtered. It's natural color. Okay, so this one's 54.8. And GlenAllachie for me always has some real peaty, not peaty, sweet honey notes. So, guys, have a little nose of that. See if you can pick up on some of that honey sweet notes. Butterscotch, toffee, classic GlenAllachie tasting notes as well, and you'll get them all in here in oodles. Now, I'm going to try this straight. I think GlenAllachie, even though it's a higher ABV, seems to drink very well. So, sounds, guys. Cheers.
Sounds. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed it was that high.
Absolutely.
Definitely, there's not a lot of burn.
Lovely and balanced, nice and rich, and yet definitely I'm getting that sweetness, and just a little bit of spice in that one as well. Cask makeup in batch 2 from memory, a little bit of ex-bourbon, PX, a little bit of Oloroso, and a little bit of virgin oak as well. And it'll be the virgin oak that'll be giving it just a little bit of spice again. Just going to put a tiny wee bit of water in it, just a little drip. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. If you can't drink at 2 o'clock in the morning, when can you drink?
Is there a bad time?
Never. Absolutely fantastic. 10-year-old cask strength, I think for a long time was pretty much my go-to in the range. Just absolutely fantastic whiskey, and it's got all that classic GlenAllachie tasting notes. So I think there's batch 2 in the USA. Batch 3 at some point will be arriving with you guys very soon. And batch 3 in a blind tasting at the World Whisky Awards was selected as best Speyside whiskey in a blind tasting. So up against all the guys, all the brands that had entered. and through each heat they all progress through to the final in London. And GlenAllachie 10-year-old cask strength batch 3 was picked as world's best whiskey. A little bit more sherry influence in batch 3. Batch 2's just got a little bit more American oak. So this will be my dram for the rest of the night now.
Very nice.
Good. Thank you very much, guys.
Joshua, what's your thoughts on GlenAllachie and their range of ages, which is pretty astounding?
Yeah, it's just making sure I'm not on mute. Good, I'm not on mute. It is astounding, and what I find so interesting about the lineup when I do a tasting, you would think a lineup, if there's 5 products in the range, 10, 12, 15, 18, 25, and you would think that when you do a tasting, you go 10, 12, 15, 18, 25. But the way I've been doing it has been 12, 10, 18, 15, 25. And it's just the way the flavor profile goes. Each bottling is so very different. But what I find interesting, and actually this batch 2 10-year-old, I think kind of tells me everything I want to tell you, is that the GlenAllachie DNA is so strong and so evident in every bottling, which is fantastic. And you just get to see the icing on the cake with the different casks that they're using, just changing up the flavor profiles a bit. Being able, as an importer with a really nice portfolio of fantastic whiskeys, to now have a Speyside distillery that has bottlings up to 25 years in our portfolio, I think is a game changer as an importer. So it's really special, really precious to us as an importer to have this. And I'm going to be very honest here really quickly. I have had the GlenAllachie 10-year-old batch 1. That was the only one I tasted until today. I hadn't tasted batch 2 until today. And I remember thinking, oh, this 10-year-old cask strength is delicious. And then I tried batch 2, and it's even better. Like the fruit is just through the roof. It's ticking all the boxes for me. So yeah, it's pretty damn special.
I thought it was
That's a great point, Joshua, there, just about, one thing about us is watch the evolution of this distillery, of this range. Aaron was asking about Billy Walker, and I gave a little bit of his, history and experience. As I said, we've got 50-odd thousand casks, but the longer we have those casks, the better we get to know our distillery, the more different wood types we get in, the longer the spirit lies in casks of our choice, we get just more and more flavors to work with. If you think of Billy as like a chef in the kitchen, and his list of ingredients is just getting greater and greater as more flavors to work with. There's new casks arriving all the time. Some of the stuff that we re-racked has now been in for almost 3 years. We've got some wood finishes coming out. I think and again, it's just taking that classic GlenAllachie DNA and taking it in a different direction. And you're going to see that with the core range as well. The core range is just going to maintain that characteristic GlenAllachie DNA, but it's just going to keep evolving. It's just evolving. And you guys are right in at the beginning of the journey with us. So let's see where we're going to be in 3 years' time, 5 years' time, and see where this distillery is going. There's something else I was going to say there, which I actually just escaped me when you put the slide up there. GlenAllachie, the name itself, for those of you that are watching and might be thinking, very Scottish. Glen is the old Scottish Gaelic word for valley, and Allachie is the old Scottish word for rock or stone. So our name literally translates in the old Scottish Gaelic as Valley of the Stones or Valley of the Rocks or whatever. And that's where we've got our slightly unusual font and packaging style as well. We just took inspiration from that. It's a lot of Pictish standing stones, sweeping curves, runes, and so forth. So, but yeah, so that's what the name means: Valley of the Rocks, Valley of the Stones. But we're more interested in the wood and what's actually happening at the distillery.
Joshua, when you said the way you do tastings with them, I found it very interesting, maybe backhanded way to not think about the number on the front of the bottle. It's about the flavor, right? And it's not that they get better with age. It's on their own. How are they? And I think you just define that by the way you're presenting these in tastings.
Yeah, 100%. As a whiskey gets older, it gets softer. It gets more delicate, more elegant. The younger the whiskey is, it's brighter. It's more engaging. It's grabs you by the tongue, and so you really have to judge the whiskey. Forget the number on the bottle. Judge the whiskey by the flavor and see how things will flow. I often think about tastings as a record, right? If you get your favorite band's record, and if they've put the songs in the right order, you've got a fantastic record that you want to listen to over and over again. But if you change those songs around, maybe it doesn't have the same dynamic. And so I think flavor is the same way.
I agree.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sorry, Sam.
About GlenAllachie, the range goes from 10 years old all the way to 29 and soon to 30 years old. But it's not like 15 years old is just 3 years older than 12. It's totally different wood treatment, and that's where the talent of Billy Walker comes so important. The 15 years old, all sherry mature, PX, Oloroso, Huckstacks, sherry butts. The 10 years old second release or batch number 2, really fantastic. Wanted to mention also that we just selected a single cask for ImpEx, the first one to come to the United States, and that's a distilled in 2006, 14 years old port pie. Fantastic whiskey, and we spent some time fighting which cask to select, and finally came to this, and I can't wait till it comes in here. There we go. Josh with his final stamp of approval. We had a little bit of a fight here because you sent so many samples and they were so wonderful, so we had to have a little bit of a but we finally found one that.
How do you pick a favorite really child? You made our lives very difficult, David.
But do you know, guys, you'll soon get up to speed with what you guys like. If you look on Facebook, social media, etc., you'll see there's a real following for GlenAllachie in port. People really go hell for leather for it. When we do a handful at the distillery in a port, people rave about it. So GlenAllachie is quite a strong spirit. Remember, it was built to be used exclusively in blended Scotch whisky, so that the blenders wanted a little to go a long way. So it's big, bold spirit, a lot of flavour, and it stands up to a lot of good casks. It stands up port, Muscatel, PX. Spirit's robust enough to hold its own and not get overwhelmed by the wood. So no, I'm glad you guys had a good time picking your cask, first of many, I hope, and I look forward to seeing that one landing in the US.
David, there's also a peated
you should
too, right?
We've got a few other brands as well.
That one, McNair's, yes.
We bought McNair's.
Yeah, the Lumrick. Yeah.
So Lumrick, you guys were talking about Burns and so forth earlier on there with Amanda, which was making me laugh. Lumrick, lang may your Lumrick, long may your Lumrick, long may your chimney smoke is an old Scottish saying to wish someone a long and prosperous life. Long may your chimney smoke, which we've abbreviated down to, and it's a traditional New Year toast. So Lumrick is our blended malt. So it is a selection of 2 Islers, 2 Speysides, one of which is GlenAllachie, which Billy Walker has blended together, filled back to a variety of different casks, let them age, let the whiskey all blend and let it marry together at the distillery. And then it was after about a year, he keeps checking it, and then it's like, bang, that's it, ready to go. So we've got a Lumrick, we've got one with no age statement, which is a little bit smoky and vibrant on the nose. Remember, there's 2 Clears in there. Two. What did I say there? 2 Islers, which I'm not supposed to name. Woot scratch.
I just heard Isla. I didn't hear anything else. Just Isla. 2 Islas. That's all I got.
Two Islers, which come from near the beginning of the alphabet. So there's 2 Islers in there. There is, gosh, I'm losing my train of thought now. One of which is GlenAllachie. So, the art of blending, putting it all together. The younger one, the peat smoke's more vibrant. 12-year-old, a little bit more subtle, a little bit more balanced, and just 12-year-old is probably my go-to range. The 21-year-old is absolutely sublime, absolutely fantastic. You just get a hint of the peat smoke on the back of the nose, the back of the palate. There we go, Josh. Good man. I'm glad to see you're prepared. And that was rated the world's best blended malt, again in a blind tasting. So you're talking whiskey experts, journalists, connoisseurs from all around the world at the World Whiskey Awards. Blind tasting rated Lumreek 21-year-old as the world's best blended malt. So it's absolutely fantastic. It's quite a limited production. It's quite hard to source 21-year-old Islay single malt, but Billy's managed to get some through his connections, and we've got a little bit aging at the distillery. So we just but it's a blended malt, so it's something a little bit more unusual.
Very exciting. Joshua, have you tried it?
Oh yes, I've tried it on multiple occasions. I may have to try it after this just to be certain that I still love it.
It's very drinkable, very drinkable. Josh, just when I've got you, I was speaking to Alistair Walker earlier tonight.
Oh, right.
And
yeah,
and I was telling him, we're saying what's happening. I said, well, I'm going to go and get my first professional haircut tomorrow, first time in 6 months. And he said, make sure, let me know if Josh has had his haircut. Because I think but I see you. Yeah.
The Jufro is back.
You're a show off.
Yeah, I actually had to put a hat on because I was near an open flame. I didn't know what was going to happen. I'll just leave it off for now. Release the Kraken, as they say.
Alrighty, so that's answered that question. I can tell Alistair tomorrow that no, you've not had your haircut. It's still alive, and it's still going.
Yeah, I'm gonna let my freak flag fly for a little while. We'll see what happens.
Fair enough. Go for it.
Go for it. People clicking off.
Oh yeah, you don't want to lose watchers. Hold on, let me put that back. There we go.
That's better. I can stay focused. I was kind of getting distracted. I thought something was going to come out the screen and attack me. It was like watching the old Sinbad Medusa cartoon from back with the Anyway, guys, we're talking about single casks earlier on. I'm sitting here at my desk in the house. Here's just two cask samples, just drawn, for evaluation.
Oh, with that bits? With that juicy bits?
Wow.
Both sherry casks. Just 2 random cask samples. There is bits in that one, quite a few bits. And it just shows you the influence of different woods, different casks. I say they're both sherry butts. Actually, so sherry punching is one, and butt on the other. So it just shows you the impact that the casks.
Delay. There he is.
Down to England tomorrow, so this might be my little travel dram. I might stick that in the back pocket.
David, are all those casks that you talked about? I can't remember the number, whatever the number was. Are they all on the property there? Do you have other warehouses right there on the property?
Yeah, they are. They are all at the distillery now. Yeah, when we bought the distillery, I think we got around 36,000 casks at the time of the acquisition, and we've. I mentioned there about GlenAllachie being owned by Pernod Ricard. So there's a few casks were swapped around with some of the other famous whiskey blenders in Scotland, and Billy's been buying those back and bringing them back to the distillery. So we've picked up some fantastic casks. But yeah, they're all at the distillery. I don't know. I don't have a picture at hand of the distillery, but if you later on have a look, there is huge warehouses at GlenAllachie. There is 100,000 casks of whiskey maturing at the distillery. It's absolutely huge. there's 14 big warehouses. We've added 2 little dunnage warehouses. We've getting another one just racked for sherry butts. I mentioned that Billy loves to work with sherry. So yeah, we've got a lot of stock there, and I say we've got whiskey stored for other people, individuals, other companies as well, laid down at a distillery. Sometimes when you're wandering through the warehouses, you see some absolutely outstanding casks. Most of them are ours, but there's 1 or 2 belters owned by other people there as well.
Joshua, you were just in Kentucky today, right? Last couple of days. I mean, that's the kind of numbers you see out of, the big boys down in Kentucky, right? So many warehouses and so many casks. That's insane.
I had heard at one time, and actually maybe David can confirm or correct this, but I had heard that at any given time in Scotland, there's around 20 million casks of whiskey sloshing around between the various distilleries, the grain distilleries, and so on.
Yeah. I've actually heard the number higher than that as well. But yeah, definitely you're well into the millions. I remember many years ago when I first started out my whiskey journey, and I worked for United Distillers. And I remember the guys at production telling me that there was more duty paid. They paid more duty on their stock waiting to get bottled than the Bank of England had gold reserves. So it shows you the size of the. So at any given time, that one company had paid more duty on their stock, on the whiskey cask that was waiting to get bottled, than the Bank of England gold reserve. So it gives you an indication of the scale and the size of the business and its value to Scotland.
That's just amazing. David, we can't thank you enough for being here tonight. I'm staying up so late and keeping your dog quiet too. Thank you.
Yeah, no, she's been very good. She's been very good.
What kind of dog? What kind of dog we want to know?
It's a yellow lab, Ivy, distillery dog.
Good dogs.
Yeah. So she's a beautiful dog. So we're taking her down to we're going down to Northumberland tomorrow. So and she's coming down. She'll love the beach when we get there. So that's that'll be a nice little trip out for us. But guys, thank you all very much for having us. Amanda, who was on there earlier on, for her organisation and the outstanding work that they're doing. There's two cafes just near me, just along the road. Have both privately owned. Been in the go for many years, and they've closed for good. And it's absolutely desperate because that's people that's put their heart and soul into that business. I dread to think what the financial impact will be in them and their families. I fear this is just the beginning of what's coming down the road. So every little initiative, like you gentlemen and Amanda have been good enough to organise, we will get behind absolutely all the way. So, as I said, I've dug out my wallet, shaking off the cobwebs. When the Bull James from KIlchoman comes on, I'll flick over to another screen and I'll prize out some hard-earned dollars and donate them to this great cause that you guys are working on.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, sir.
And
no worries.
Thank you for bringing the GlenAllachie to us tonight.
Thanks again, Sam. Where's my sample of KIlchoman? Did you not send me one for that? I'll have to go and read my own supply. Gents, thanks again.
Cheers, Dave.
Sorry, we're sold out.
Take care, guys. I will see you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks again. All the very
Cheers.
best.
Thank you.
Cheers.
That was great, guys. It's really interesting seeing a distillery that's so young yet with such old stock. It's really fascinating.
It's really special what they were able to get from Pernod Ricard in a distillery that no one's ever tried before because it all went to blend. Oh, and by the way, it came with 40,000 casks.
Hey,
it's just
gold mine.
Phenomenal. And one thing I need to mention here, Michael Bloom gave me kudos for my references. Did you guys notice David said hell bent for leather?
Yes,
he threw in a Judas Priest reference in there, and I think he needs a little nod. He needs a little nod.
That was very good.
And you are a metalhead from days of yore, right?
I can confirm that. Yes.
Sure.
I remember that little series you wrote many years ago where you took a bunch of distilleries and you named them after, and you paired them up with a band.
Yeah, it was comparing the 8 Isla distilleries with, with a specific band. So
I remember that very well.
Bowmore was Bowie and so on. And that even got a write-up in the Ilia, the Isla newspaper.
Uh-huh.
And Bruichladdich did a bottling for it, which was ridiculous. Yeah, it was very funny.
Out on the shelf there when we were there too.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
It's so silly.
It's fun. It's fun. It's very fun.
No, it was great. Well, guys, again, we are here tonight to talk whiskey from the ImpEx family, and also to bring highlight to what is going on into the hospitality industry and all of the tragedy of job losses because of COVID, amongst other things, and to highlight another rally.org who is trying to raise funds. There you go on the scroll. The boys are pointing to it, to donate to another rally.org to much needed dollars to that worthy cause to help support so many folks that are in need. It's a 501c, so you can definitely write that off on your taxes if you're here in the States. If you're not, talk to your own government.
Should I cue the OJs? Should I put a little bit of money?
We
can cue the OJs. Is that allowed? Is that allowed? Will the OJs lawyers call me if I do that?
Oh no.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
We are moving south west from where we were.
We're going to a distillery that is near and dear to our hearts, and we've been following it for many years.
Yes. We are going to KIlchoman, and we are going to welcome the North American sales and marketing manager of KIlchoman, James Wills, into our little group here. James, are you there?
Not yet, but he's going to be. Boom! There he is.
James! How are you, my friend?
James!
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. It's early morning here, but what better way to wake up than with a dram 5 minutes after you open your eyes?
and this dram's an eye opener.
The boys have poured our first KIlchoman here, which is the Cask 302 2007 11-year-old.
Yeah. Well, the 11-year-old. This is a bourbon cask, I think. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So it's this is kind of a whiskey, a dram that my dad would drink every day of the week, I think. So 10, 11-year-old fresh bourbon barrel, cask strength. This is kind of a whiskey which is very much representative of the style that we produce at KIlchoman.
So it's on the nose. It's just amazing. It's what we know and love about.
And the style is called Delicious. Is that the style? Is that what you call it?
That's the style we're going for. Yeah. So it's produced from our heavier peated malt. So this is 50 ppm. And then it's a 2007 cask, so it's most likely a Buffalo Trace bourbon barrel, and then matured on Islay for the 11 years, and I guess this will marry the kind of maybe the lighter, fruitier side to KIlchoman with some of the caramel vanilla from the bourbon barrel, and with a lot of KIlchomans, this dram, the peat doesn't overwhelm the whiskey. It very much allows a lot of that lighter floral character to shine through, as well as that kind of smoke and slight kind of maritime influence, which KIlchoman is known for. And I think we sort of sit in this little niche on Islay where you've sort of got the smoke, but it's not too much, it's not too overwhelming, and there's a nice balance between that and the fruitier character.
Delicious. So we just talked to David Keir from GlenAllachie in Speyside with his little quote unquote 4-year-old distillery. You guys were once the young kids on the block of Islay, and you guys are growing up. Talk about the origins of Islay and your dad, and where you are today.
Yeah, so I guess we started off 2005, so 15 years ago now, coming up in December anyway. We filled our first cask in December 2005.
And you were how old then?
What's that, sir?
How old were you then?
I was going to say guess, but no, I was in my late teens. So I was sort of 18, 19.
Okay.
It's been a hard 15 years.
So you've literally grown up in the whiskey industry.
Yeah, no, it's it's been an interesting time. You know, it's 2005 we started. My father basically sold up the family house on the mainland of Scotland, and we moved over to Islay, which is kind of the family home of my mother's family, the Wilkses. But prior to that, it kind of been a sort of holiday home, really. I hadn't spent any more than kind of a month at a time there. And we sold up the family home, moved over there. My dad put every penny he had into building KIlchoman. And he wanted to build a distillery which was a little bit different from what had sort of gone before, or the established distilleries that were on the island. And he wanted to create a farm distillery. So, you know, then and now a good portion of our production is made from barley that we grow ourselves. And we go through the whole process for that whiskey ourselves on site. So we grow it, we malt it, distill it, mature it, and then eventually bottle it. And that sort of specific whiskey in our range, which comes from our barley, is referred to as 100% Islay. And over the years, as the kind of demand for our whiskey has kind of increased, and we've maybe become a little bit more ambitious, we've started to use commercial malted barley that we buy from Port Ellen as well. So we sit at about 80-20 in terms of, you know, barley that we grow to barley that we buy. I can't remember which way around it was. The barley that the 20% is the barley that we grow. So yeah, we grow about 200 tons of barley every year, and we go through the whole process with that barley. No one else does that. So you've got distilleries like Springbank and Springbank use locally grown barley, malt it themselves, you know, in a very, very traditional way, and take it through the whole process. But obviously they're not growing it themselves, so they don't necessarily have control over the exact varieties, how it's grown, where it's grown, how it's harvested. And then you have other distilleries that maybe don't malt, and you know, so they again don't have necessarily control over the peating, the peat source, the peating level. And so the whole idea with KIlchoman and particularly with the 100% Islay range is that we have that control at every part of the process, where we can change barley variety, change peat source, peating level, any aspect of the production process. We can adapt to the style of whiskey that we're really looking to produce.
Is all the peat from Islay?
Well, all of the peat is from Islay. For the 50 ppm stuff that we buy from Port Ellen Maltings, that comes from a slightly different area of the island. For the 100% Islay malted barley that we are growing and malting ourselves, we use peat which is cut by Derek, one of our maltmen. He I don't know why he put in for tender. You know, it was a big contract, but he came through as the winner. It's not. I mean, people kind of think of Islay distilleries and peat as us using vast quantities of peat. We're not talking about huge quantities here. You know, for a batch of 3 or 4 tons, which is our standard sort of batch for our KIlchoman grown barley, we're only using about a wheelbarrow of whiskey. Oh, sorry, of peat. It's early in the morning here, and I've already had a couple of whiskeys. So
That's a good morning.
It's really hard to know what level to come in at, having sort of, you know, woken up 10 minutes ago and having kids just above my head. So
you mentioned your dad. So where was he before this? And did he always want to be a whiskey maker? Was he in the spirits industry?
Well, he was in the wine industry. He's an Englishman, hence where I get my Queen's English from. Not much of a thick Scottish accent when it comes to the KIlchoman boys. But yeah, he's an Englishman. He was originally grew up in Somerset in the southwest of England, and he worked in wine for about 20 years. And then when we moved up to Scotland, when he moved us up to Scotland when I was about 8, he kind of transitioned from wine into whiskey, and he was an independent bottler for a while.
Oh.
He did that for about about 7 years, 5, 7, 10 years, and then he kind of saw the increase in demand for single malt, and particularly Islay single malt in the sort of 90s, I guess, early 2000s, and then he took the full bank balance and plowed it all into KIlchoman. And I mean, we can sort of look back and laugh about that now, because we've had some success in the last kind of 10 years. But the reality of building a new distillery is that it's not all plain sailing. And in the first kind of 5 years, we had our struggles, financially. A distillery is a very hungry beast. So he quickly ran out of money, and we've got other investors now. So as well as the kind of Will's family, we have some other investors as well who we work very well with. They're very supportive. Not necessarily whiskey people, but that's perhaps helpful in many ways, because we're left to our own devices, which is good.
And you've gone through a major expansion in the last few years, right?
Yeah, we've spent about £6 million in the last 4 or 5 years expanding the distillery. So when my dad built the initial kind of still house, he put in quite small stills. There are wash stills about 3,000 liters, spirit stills about 2,000 liters, which is very, very small. I haven't seen any new distillery build or put in stills that are that small, because they kind of they go into it perhaps with their eyes open a little bit more, having seen other distilleries make mistakes that we made. So we put in very small stills initially, and that has an impact on the spirit and the quality of KIlchoman in a positive way, but it limits how much you can expand, because those stills are really the big limiting factor. And so when we came to kind of hit that capacity, we had to take a big decision as to whether to spend a lot of money and put in effectively a whole new still house, or whether we were kind of gonna bumble along as a relative sort of very small distillery in the whiskey world. We decided to take that leap. So it's, as well as a new still house, we've got an entirely new set of washbacks, so 6 new washbacks, new cooling towers, new mash tun. Everything is new effectively. The only piece of shared equipment between the two sides of the still house, the new and the old, is the boiler. So it was a very expensive expansion. Sometimes a distillery can just put in a couple of pieces of equipment, maybe a couple of washbacks, and they can produce more whiskey. But for us, that wasn't the case. And as well as that, we've built a new malt floor, so that we have the capacity to grow more barley and malt more barley ourselves from the barley that we're growing. And we've also built a new visitor center, which was completed in about mid-February. Perfect timing for so it was opened. We had an official opening. Sam came all the way over from California, and then about 2 weeks later, after that, we had to shut it again because of COVID. So but it's all good. It's been a really interesting sort of journey, and I think my father is able to enjoy the good times more because of the bad times. That doesn't mean necessarily that he wouldn't go back and change a few things. But the good thing is the whiskey, the way that we make our whiskey, and the quality of the spirit that we produce has always been very good and very well received. So that's always been the kind of the positive thing that's pulled us through.
Joshua, I don't know if it was you or Jason said this when we were there 6 years ago. That there's a Springbank quality-ish, not of the spirit, but of the distillery. There's more like the Springbank of Islay, and there's a very hands-on approach. There's a very old world approach to a lot of what they do at KIlchoman. And, I remember walking around there and just feeling like I could just do anything I wanted right now. I could just walk around and I could pick up some barley and taste it and walk across to the barn across the way. And it felt very, aside from friendly, it just felt very hands-on-ish, like Springbank is. And it shows in the quality of the whiskey that gets produced.
Yeah, I think that's a really good comparison. I won't claim that comment. I'll give it to Jason because he's a bit smarter than I am. But but what I will say, one of the things that always struck me about KIlchoman is, I mean, now things have changed a little bit, but in those earlier 2000s or earlier 2010s or whatever, it was the only distillery where you could, if you were into whiskey in the mid 2000s, you could have followed that journey of KIlchoman from the get-go. And let's say you got into whiskey in 2010, you're not too far behind from everyone else. And if you compare KIlchoman to, say, the Bowmores of the world, the Lafroigs, the Lagavulins, all wonderful distilleries, Ardbeg, right? Great distilleries, but none of us were around 200 years ago, right? You couldn't watch the evolution. You couldn't taste the evolution. And this is why, at least for me, joining ImpEx was so very special, because I had started that KIlchoman journey in 2007, and I continue, sales stuff aside, right? My job aside, as a fan of KIlchoman, I still find it so incredibly fascinating to see their whiskeys change as they get a bit older, to watch what they're doing as they're coming out with new products. It almost feels as if you're a part of it. And I think that kind of talks to what you were talking about before. Here we are, we're there 6 years ago, and you could do anything you want. You were a part of that in a weird way. And I think that's so damn special.
Yeah, I agree.
You still can do whatever you like. I mean, we're a very, very sort of casual, not casual, but we're not a corporate company whatsoever, and that's why we like it. When people turn up, when we go to distilleries and it feels too corporate, we go, thank God our distillery tours aren't like this. This is pretty painful. But we want it to feel like when you can walk around the distillery, you can stop and you can chat with anyone, and you can do whatever you like. Just don't turn any knobs that are too big or look too important. But yeah, I mean, I think when you come to home, there's no lines painted on the floor as to where you should walk, and the visitors don't have to wear high-vis vests, and the still house door is always open, so people walk in there all the time. It annoys the hell out of the guys in there, but they're always very welcoming if you just decide to poke your nose in and have a chat.
One thing I enjoyed this year, I guess one benefit, quote unquote, of COVID is this way that we're talking tonight, right? We're talking from all over the world, and never having been to the Isla Festival, the Fischel, and seeing you and your dad and your brother walking during that week and doing all kinds of things on YouTube and I think Instagram as well, and watching your dad kind of like me fumble around with YouTube and how to manage the social media. It was great to be there kind of with you guys, and which we've not been there before during those kind of holidays.
Yeah, I mean, we take the approach of what's the worst that can happen kind of thing. And we apply that across the board, so when even cask maturation, it'll still be okay, even if it doesn't work out perfectly kind of thing. But yeah, with the face stuff, we did a lot. I mean, it was basically me just walking around with a stick with a microphone on the end, and it's all very natural stuff. You get the personalities of everyone there, and it's genuinely a really nice place to spend time. We've got a lot of young people at the distillery because we have we have the visitor center side, which employs a lot of young people. We have the bottling as well, which again employs a lot of young people, and we have a sort of a number of people, which makes it feel like a busy place. We have about 35 people at the distillery, and so even though we're the second smallest or the smallest distillery on the island, I think we are the smallest distillery on the island. We actually employ the second highest number of people in terms of the distilleries. You know, so it's a busy place. It's a fun place to be. Yeah.
What can we look forward to coming to the States?
So in the US, the next kind of, well, in general actually, because for once we managed to sort of get the timings right in terms of launches in the US and the rest of the world. And next week in the US, I guess, as well as around the world, we're going to be releasing our 10th edition of the 100% Islay. So this is this year's edition of the 100% Islay range, which is made from our own barley, and it's a combination of harvests from 2007, 2009, and 2010. However, it's a 9-year-old whiskey, but the clue to how old the whiskey is genuinely is in the harvest dates. It's a combination of bourbon and sherry maturation. That's a kind of combination of cask that my father leans to a lot with Kilchoman. It kind of gives the whiskey the ability to show off the Islay side of the whiskey. You know, that high bourbon barrel maturation allows for the peat smoke, the citrus, the light flavors come through, and then quite often he'll vat in some sherry cask as well to add a little bit of richness. So it's a lightly peated expression. All of our 100% Islas are, and bottled at 50 ABV. And I'd love to say that I'm drinking it here, but I actually don't even have a bottle yet because it hasn't been dispatched to me. But we're going to be talking about it a lot in the coming weeks. So yeah, there'll be more Kilchoman people standing in fields with microphones on sticks and things like that.
Sam and Joshua, is that here in the States yet, or is it still on the water?
It just arrived 3 days ago, Aaron, and Kilchoman was nice enough and understanding enough in terms of us being far away from where they are versus European distributors or markets or countries. And this time they worked perfectly in terms of making 750 ml bottles available. And we just air flew here, and it's here along with another limited release, which called Batch 3, which is a James, you want to take us through this, or?
Sure, yeah. So it's the 100% Islays here, but then also we have a US exclusive small batch, which has also arrived. And so the small batch is kind of a range that we managed to persuade my dad to do, because he's very protective of his whiskey. So he wants to sell it enough to do what he wants to do at the distillery, but he doesn't want to sell too much. He wants to kind of hoard it in the warehouse as much as he can. So we managed to persuade him to create a range where we can come up with small batch releases of around about 2,000 bottles that are exclusives to particularly sort of good markets around the world. So this batch though is actually is quite unique. Normally we take a vatting of bourbon and sherry at 46%. So depending on how he wants the vatting to come together, he'll adjust those proportions of the bourbon and sherry, and then he'll take maybe a port cask or a Madeira cask or a Sauterne cask, whatever it might be, something a bit different, and he'll add that into the vatting to create a quite a distinctly different style from that sort of core expression version of Kilchoman, the bourbon and the sherry. And however, with this one, we've added a lot more of that alternative cask type. So this is about the small batch, which is going to be released, is about 50% port cask maturation, and then it's about 45% bourbon and then a small amount sherry. So it's quite different. Port cask matured Kilchoman is always incredibly popular. We really can't keep hold of it. We get to about 4 years in the warehouse, and suddenly after 4 years of everyone asking, can I have a port cask, we give in, and we don't really have any proper aged port casks in the warehouse as a result. But yeah, it's beautiful. Sort of the light citrus influence of Kilchoman with the port influence during maturation really gives that, lots of red fruit, real juicy freshness. So I should think that the batch 3 will be a big hit. Sam's off to get a bottle, and think here he is.
Oh, look at that!
Yeah,
it's much darker, James. It's much darker.
Yeah. You can see even on the screen there. Look, there's loads of
Wow.
So rich looking.
Yeah.
So the batch 1 was 25%, as James mentioned. This is actually 50%. When I called him, I said, "Hey, can you get your dad drunk enough to agree to dump not 1 cask of matured in port, but 2 casks?" James was right. James said, "Yeah, sure, we can do it." So can I say that U.S. is the only country in the world that gets this kind of proportion?
I'm sensing a theme, Sam. Good whiskey, good business.
What amazes me is Sam's. That's not open. Like, you have a lot of willpower to not open that. I would be diving into that immediately.
You won't open it until everyone else has a bottle.
I want to tease you guys, and the booze dancing, we'll get the samples, I promise. This is for sure. But yeah, we're about to talk about 100% Islay today, but the flight was rescheduled twice, and came to the point when it was kind of risky to ship it to you, especially you guys from East Coast, Mike and Gilo. So we decided to go with ImpEx Collection, 11 years old. But yeah, it's here, Aaron, to answer your question. The 100%, and thank you, James, for making it happen. That we're kind of launching it at the same time as European markets. That's perfect. Wanted to also take a moment to thank Travis Williams, who is a huge. I mean, you guys all are great, but I see his comments. And Travis, thank you very much for being a huge supporter of KIlchoman. I think everyone in the whiskey community in the U.S. knows this name, and it's like Travis Williams, KIlchoman, Travis Williams. Thank you for that.
What else is coming up? Anything else new coming into the States?
Sam always has a couple of single casks that he's kind of tasting as well as Joshua. So we've got a fairly consistent kind of turnover of ImpEx Cask Evolution series, which is basically Sam and Joshua and getting together and tasting some casks. And Sam, I don't know how he does it. Well, I do know how he does it. Sam and my dad have worked together for a long time, and my dad recognizes the big hard-working bloke that Sam is, and he plies my father with booze every time he comes over to the US, and he gets his timing just right. So he's drunk enough that he will remember committing to something, but he's not so drunk that he'll commit to something too outlandish. So he's perfect. He's well adept at getting the timing just right, and so he manages to tease out all sorts of things out of my father that other people don't get.
That's right. Yeah, you get him so drunk where he wants to sell the half of the stack right there, and then he comes back and talks to James and Kathy, and but that's a different story. What is coming in the pipeline, Aaron, is 2 more limited releases that are on the water right now, with the arriving time about maybe towards the end of October or even beginning of November, which is going to be a Fino cask, Fino Sherry. That's the first one. And, I'm proud to say that we have so many whiskey enthusiasts in ImpEx. Probably everyone has its special kind of, love to KIlchoman. But Jared Card, our Mid-Atlantic rep, is very much crazy about KIlchoman. He's got a huge collection of KIlchoman casks, and that's his love. And he was at the distillery, and he tasted that Fino, and he loved it so much, so all the way back, the whole trip that we had, with all the ImpEx team, Sam, you gotta bring it. Sam, you gotta bring it. You gotta bring it. So he even sent me the information that if you go to warehouse number, whatever, and you go straight, and then you go to the right, and you'll see this that I tasted. He drove everyone crazy, including James. James, thank you for your patience on this. But yes, we're getting this Fino limited release that we're all very excited about. And also we're getting the Macher Bay Cask Strength Christmas Edition, along with Fino, which I think one of the best KIlchoman releases that ever been released. As Macher Bay Cask Strength is my favorite. We had a few during our KIlchoman tour, West Coast tour, East Coast tour, Midwest tour. So, and then we just wait for Josh, who is probably has this sample of Calvados single cask in your big box that was sent. Kind of a stamp of approval? I think so. I don't remember, but we had a conversation with James a few hours ago today, and I kind of committed to it. Yeah, so no matter, Mr. Hatton, if you like it or not, we're going to bring it because we're excited to have something that never been here and bring it into our KIlchoman Cask Evolution, ImpEx Cask Evolution series, and I think you're going to like it as well. So Calvados cask, guys.
Wow, that's interesting.
Smoked apple.
It really is beautiful. I was tasting through the Calvados casks last week when I was in Islay, and they're really nice. It's a different, it's an unexpectedly light, rich kind of style. It works very well. I think we'll be filling some casks for full maturation as well. And also, I tasted some tequila and some mezcal cask, which we have an eye on for the US as well.
So, James, who does the cask hunting? Your dad?
Well, yeah, he doesn't do much else these days, really. So he takes any excuse to go into the warehouse. So whenever we have guests or whoever's around, he kind of uses that as an excuse to go into the warehouse and get them to climb on top of the cask and pull samples for him. They love, but also is good for him. We don't have 50,000 casks in the warehouse. We have about 10. So it's easier to keep an eye on how everything's kind of coming along. And so actually, every other year, my whole family, the Wills family, are all on Islay. And after about 3 days, we all get sick of each other. So we take keys for different warehouses, and we'll go through and taste a whole load of different casks and kind of, come back to my dad and say, well, this is good, this is no good, and we kind of go through it like that. It's a fairly sort of simple process in that we don't have masses of casks. So we know that there are some tequila or mezcal casks that we filled in January, and so we should taste them in 6 months' time, and we'll go and do that. And because we have a very consistent supply of Buffalo Trace casks, we're only filling Buffalo Trace bourbon barrels, and that is very much the backbone of our maturing stock. Is those bourbon barrels? So we can be pretty reliant, and over the years, they've shown to be very, very consistent. So we don't need to be checking up on them all the time. But so that's pretty easy. The sherry casks can be a bit more variable, and then when it comes to the kind of alternative cask types, then they need quite a lot of maybe when it comes to PX casks or maybe any of the big distinct port casks or big distinctive cask types. You need to check up on them pretty regularly. My father just bought some. I can't remember how big they are. He just bought some red wine casks. I don't know if you tried our STR maturation.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, so he's basically bought giant STR casks. I can't remember. They each hold about 15 barrels, and they're like vatting tanks, really. So he's filled them up, and one's got a particularly deep char, one's got a slightly lighter char. So I've filled them up as well with bourbon barrels just to see how that comes along for 5-year-old bourbon barrels.
All right, John.
Giant, right? They were like 4,000 liters or something, right? That's what.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Wow.
It's almost like a washback.
Yeah, people were saying they love wooden washbacks on social media. I was like, well, do I correct them or should I just leave them into their loving of wooden washbacks?
John, how's it smell?
So I just got back from a trip today, and so now I'm digging into this box. So thank you again, Sam, for sending. I'm so tempted to just pour and nose it and taste it now, but there is.
He's not going to do it. You can't persuade him.
I mean, I can. All right. All right. Here we go. All right, I'll give you.
Witness our fights because I know exactly what he's thinking now. Port's got more dry fruit, mixed dry fruit, and more of a power kind of house. And then the STR would be your favorite, and you're gonna hate me for selecting the Calvados because to me it was more delicate, more like, you know, KIlchoman DNA going through, and that's how the.
I totally agree. I agree, and I don't think you should apologize to Joshua. You know.
No.
You're pandering to him. He's a whiskey diva.
I love the idea of Calvados because your spirit's already really nice and fruity with this delicate floral element, and so I imagined that the Calvados, that slight appley kind of quality, would work, and it's working. It smells really lovely.
Well, it's always a game, right? It's really a balancing, trying to not overshadow the DNA of the spirit with this weird, whatever the cask might be. You don't want this thing tasting like an apple pie, 100%.
Oh, why the hell not?
Well,
I'm good with that.
You want delicateness to it, right?
It's real pretty. Yeah, the apple is not. It's not massive apple. It's not. I'm not drinking an apple pie, but there's just hints of a little like baked Granny Smith going on, right, along with some of that floral.
It's quite an elegant kind of style.
Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, it's pretty. It's real pretty.
Green apples that just got out of the oven, and you see the sugar becomes kind of a brown, and that's what you get there, like a green baked apple.
Yeah, perfect, Sam. Yep, those are great notes.
James,
well done.
There's a question below here, if you can see that.
Yeah. So, the batch 3, the small batch 3, which Sam and I were talking about, you know, the one with 50% port maturation, that's going to be the closest to Amburach. I don't know if people know the story of Amburach or if you want.
I do not.
So Amburach was a style which came about, which is a whiskey which came about by accident. So Amburach in Gaelic means like a cock up, you know, like I don't know if I can say fuck on too late.
All right, go ahead.
It was a bit of a f up, and it was a combination of Maccabee. We had Maccabee in one tank, and we had port maturation in the other, and a particularly thick member of the bottling team, or he was maybe hungover or whatever. He opened up a combination of valves by accident, which meant the two tanks equalized, and we ended up with a combination of Maccabee and port, which we then put back into cask and matured longer, and eventually became Amburach, which was a recent release, which was very popular. But it was essentially that combination of kind of mainly bourbon cask matured whiskey and port maturation. So really, the Amburach and the small batch 3 will have a lot of similarities, and so Amburach was very popular as a style and as a story as well. But the batch 3 will have that similar sort of flavor profile, lots of red fruits, lots of port influence.
I pulled out the 2017 West Coast Tour Mocker Bay, which is just stunning. It is so, it's what you hear, James, just so delicious. This is cask strength at, where's that? I can't see the ABV on it. A lot. 60%.
Yeah. So the cask strength Maccabee, which we're doing as a kind of special, we're calling it a festive release. I mean, the only thing that's festive about it, it's got like some sheet with Christmas hats on it, kind of thing, on the packaging. So it's a bit of a sort of like not gimmick. Well, it is a bit gimmicky, really. But the whiskey itself has a really sort of good proven track record in terms of, we've done these cask strength versions of Maccabee with some regularity, because we do these tours through Europe where originally it was just like me and my brothers jumped in the KIlchoman Land Rover and we drove through like 8 countries in Europe. And it's kind of developed from there. About 6 years ago, we did that. and now we do stuff in the US and China and Japan and anywhere we have the excuse to sort of get in a car and just drive along for a month or two. It's a pretty good it's good fun. Anyway, during those tours, we've always done this cask strength Mac a day as a kind of limited edition for the stocks that we make. But we've decided this year, because we couldn't get around and see everyone, we thought, well, we'll maybe do a sort of special edition of Mac Bay for the whole world, which is cask strength. And it's kind of what you expect in some ways, but then it's not in others. You know, it's big, it's hard hitting because the strength is up at late 50s, but it also retains a real kind of subtlety and depth of character as well. So I think if you're a fan of Islay whiskey and if you're a fan of cask strength whiskey, the cask strength Mac is absolutely gonna tick the boxes.
How many bottles do you put out worldwide on that one?
Well, we sort of put out the feelers in terms of said, okay, we're thinking about doing this. How many bottles would you like in an ideal world? And the reaction was quite positive. So it ended up being about like 10 or 15,000 bottles, which was way above what we thought it would be. So it's sort of, I think in the US is going to be, just over 1,000 bottles, maybe 1,200 bottles. It's similar across kind of big European countries in the Far East as well.
I remember this independent bottler who's got one of the principals of it has this funny haircut, and he released this 4-year-old KIlchoman years ago. That was just amazing. Any ideas if this independent bottler who goes by the
I wouldn't call it a haircut.
No, this is the opposite
weeds,
of
man.
I think you need to wash it as well. God,
washing would help you.
James, I was wearing a hat. Come on.
He's got a hat.
Yeah, well, Josh is another one. He's a good diplomat, and I honestly think that is. Well, Joshua probably knows actually. That's the bottling that we did for the for you guys was the only cask, I think, or the only independently bottled KIlchoman with a different label that we allowed them to put KIlchoman Distillery on it. Is that right?
Yes, that is 100% correct. I still pinch myself to this day, and I still bug your father to this day. And
you must have got him absolutely steaming.
What's that?
You're the expression "steaming drunk" if you're absolutely steaming.
I have to get him steaming. I'll do that. Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
We actually tried everything with a second bottle or second cask for Single Cask Nation, and we got him drunk enough to say yes, and then that's the exact example that we were talking about before.
I think he did say yes and then said no.
He said yes and you backed out of it.
I got a funny story as Aaron showed this West Coast 2017. You all remember we mentioned Elijah Ammon, right? So we're on the tour, and we started with Southern California, Northern California, then we went to Washington, and we had, stopped somewhere at the restaurant. We did a tasting, and I'm walking out with Anthony talking about something, and the man approaches us, going, "Are you from KIlchoman?" "Yeah." "Well, I came from Southern California. I'm looking for a bottle of West Coast tour for my son-in-law." So we talked, we found the bottle for him, and that was Elijah. It was Elijah's father-in-law who came away from Southern California to Washington to find the bottle for his, lovely son-in-law, and that's how we then ended up of hiring Elijah as our representative.
Amazing.
It's all connected, Joshua.
Maybe a better relationship than I have with my father-in-law.
Well, if your father is looking for a bottle of KIlchoman, give him our phone number. We'll find it.
Well, KIlchoman is just a fan favorite of ours. We've been, right, guys? We love it. We just can't
Absolutely.
The house style is just so beautiful. It's so elegant.
I think the Macure Bay is what won Mike over on Isla many years ago.
It's the one that it's well, the 4-year-old that Joshua put out. That cask was just stunning, and that was kind of exactly.
That was me winking.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the beginning of my KIlchoman journey, and to some extent, and it was. Well, I mean, 4-year-old.
I didn't know that.
4-year-old back in. You released that in 2013-ish.
2012.
So that was it's 4-year-old from then, right? So that's the beginnings of almost.
There you go. Yeah,
right?
Good point.
Almost.
Since you mentioned the age, Aaron, I can not mention the 14 years old that we just brought in, and that was a kind of we've been working for 10 years. Was the 10th anniversary of our collaboration with different companies, and we can be more proud of having KIlchoman in our portfolio. But most importantly is the relationship. There we go, Joshua. Yeah. The relationship that has so much of a human touch between our families, between our companies. That celebrates the 10th anniversary, kind of a milestone between the companies. So, James, kudos to all his family.
Yeah, cheers to your dad and your family. It's just wonderful distillery, and we're fans. We love it. I've never. It's like whiskey distillery. It'd be hard to find a bad bottle, right? I don't know that I've ever had a bad experience with a KIlchoman. It's impossible, right?
I don't think it's a thing.
The taste of it is, you can see that it's genuine because my father tastes the rum cast and he immediately says this is disgusting, and we need to do something about it. So there is one bad cask in the warehouse, but we'll keep that tucked away for a while. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's great, and we appreciate all of the support we've had. Over the years, everyone who's ever poured a dram of KIlchoman for anyone else, we're very much appreciative. And I think my father started off KIlchoman thinking that he could create his own little sort of niche and maybe produce 50, maybe 100,000 liters of whiskey a year and sort of take over. And the whiskey enthusiasts around the world have gotten hold of the whiskey that we put out, and we've just been riding that wave ever since. So it's really a huge thank you from us to the likes of you guys and everyone else who's so enthusiastic about Scotch whiskey, and we really wouldn't be in the position we are without those guys. So yeah, we're very much appreciative of the support we've had.
Well, we're definitely Isla fans. We definitely like Pete, except Mike. And
and when this is all over, we're coming.
Yeah, and we're coming when this is all said and done, and the planes will fly on New York. And
how's your rowing, Aaron?
Sorry?
How's your rowing?
My rowing is going to get really good if it doesn't end soon.
Can you get your oldest to sail? Like,
get his boat out, and we'll all take the date.
Let's do it. What do we got to lose?
That's right. James, we can't thank you enough for taking some time in the middle of the night to talk about your wonderful distillery. And
thank you, James.
It was spectacular.
No, well, thanks very much to you guys. Yeah, and all for a good cause as well. I don't want to put a downer on it, but obviously it's a tough time for a lot of people in the industry, and so yeah, congrats on putting this together, and I hope you raise some money for a very worthwhile cause.
Cheers, and cheers to everyone there and to everyone on Isla.
Cheers, James.
Guys.
Cheers, James. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Do I click leave studio? Yeah, is that right?
There you go.
That's right. Wow. That was
a hell of a night there, boys.
And one whiskey. What was the loser of the night? I mean, they were all fantastic whiskeys.
They were all delicious
from all over the place, all different and all delicious.
You know, that pomegranate thing was just wacky,
That's fun.
right?
That's a fun whiskey.
Boy,
And
just
I really like the GlenAllachie. That was really delicious too.
well, it's calf strength, so it's really got a punch to it. I like that.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good. I'm finishing up the pomegranate.
I can't wait for that to get here. That's fun.
Yeah.
Sam, Joshua, cannot thank you guys enough. This was just you guys. This doesn't happen without you guys connecting with all your folks here in your little stable of distilleries, and this was just spectacular to get us all together.
Yeah, and Sam, we were supposed to just talk about building a whiskey bar. Well, I think we just did.
That's how it started.
I think we just did.
You did.
I think it's done.
That's right. That's how it started.
This is cool. Yeah, I was thinking about, like, the idea was great, but I thought, let's just tour the world in our pajamas.
I think it's fantastic.
Well, the fact that you've got so many great brands in your list, it's you can do this kind of thing. It's just really spectacular. And I know you're coming out. You guys are getting this married as like a rum, correct? And I think mezcal as well. Those are things that are either already out or coming, correct?
Yeah, we brought 10 casks of rum from Jamaica, and we're going to start bottling the first one. We're waiting for it to become 15 years old, long pond, single cask, in January.
Oh, so it's a super funky rum.
Yeah, we're looking for this kind of funky rum.
Uh-huh.
And then my guys from Northern California, specifically Robert Horton, who is a Northern California sales manager, has tight connections with mezcal producers, like artisan mezcal producers, and will be our next kind of project. And I know that Joshua is involved in a similar project with Single Cask Nation. So it all comes together, goes parallel, and we're all super excited about it. Super excited.
Sure.
Josh, any last thoughts?
Well, the whole time, all I can think was, these five amazing guests that have been on the show, and we could have a great portfolio and all that, but if it weren't for you giving us the opportunity to talk with you, to talk with your viewers, we wouldn't have anything. So none of this is possible without people like yourselves to allow us to get out there, to get the word out there, to tell people about.
You were us not so long ago.
That's right.
And now I'm you, just with crazier hair.
With
sure.
luscious hair.
Keep going back to the
You're
hair.
flaunting it.
Yeah,
you keep flaunting the hair.
I got hair.
And thank you again for allowing us to kind of put a theme around this night to help out an industry that's so hard hit and connected to all of us.
Yeah.
We all know people in the industry, in the hospitality industry, who have been hurt by this last 6 to 8 months, and hopefully we can get the awareness out for another round, another rally, and they can get some dollars their way to help some folks who need the help. So thank you again for allowing us to do that.
I really, go ahead, Sam.
Well, I want to thank Gilo and Mike and Adam, and you, Joshua, of course. You kind of orchestrated everything here, where everyone was able to, be part of it. And of course, Amanda is amazing. I already got a text from one of my reps that she knows her very well. Summer. But most, important, I want to thank everyone who joined today's event, and for people who support us in any way. Like, I see people, Michael Bloom and Brian DeVore and Jared Carr finally made it, and many, many others that I don't see on this chat. Just thank you very much for your loyalty and your huge support to our brands. We need it, and we appreciate it very much.
Gentlemen, we thank you so much for being a part of this and making this night so special, and helping us out and spending a what, 3.5 hours?
3.5 hours.
Yeah. Don't go just yet, though. We're going to roll the end credits. We'll just chat briefly offline, and we'll end this thing.
I didn't think we'd be getting into Jerry Lewis telethon.
Springsteen, baby. Springsteen
area.
New Jersey.
Yep.
Springsteen country.
I think we're getting into roll area here, right? Thanks, guys. This was
Thank you. Hang around in the green room for a second. I'm going to roll the end credits, and we could chat just for a couple minutes afterwards.
Sounds good.
All right. Cool.
Another round, anotherrally.org. Please make a donation. Help out the folks in the hospitality industry. Good night, guys.
Cool. Hang around for a second. All right, gents. We're going to roll the credits.
Roll the credits.
I got to tell you, that's really 7 great guests. Those 2 guys are great. We had 7 great guests tonight. That was something.
That was good, man. This was big. This was epic.
Well,
like the kids say.
Well, for our final show, this was pretty good.
Oh, we're done? We're done? Wait, we didn't get renewed?
Canceled.
Is there no syndication?
I'm going to start a podcast and move to the Virgin Islands.
Yeah, awesome. I'm there. I'm with you. All right, let's roll the credits, boys.
Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.